Tum tum. Screen cap. Right about there-ish, I think. Right now the room's locked anyway. There's a link out there for if I decide I give a shit later. Actually, I should put this on a different window, shouldn't I? Yeah, let's leave that for later. Maybe. I don't know. Actually, let's just... Yeah, we're fine with this. Leave that running. And add source. Screen capture. Grab this right here. I'm just fucking around right now. Don't mind me. I'm not sure if there's going to even be a point to this. Let's see now. Well, I can't find that, so yeah, let's do this. Oh wait, no, that's not how that works. Damn it, I can't do it that way. Shit. Yeah, fuck. Now let's change that status to anyone with a link. There we go. Put it on that for now. Let's see now. Hey, hey Pluto, how's it going? Screen cap. There we go. Let's grab that up there. Grab this. Know what the hell I'm doing here. There we go. That technically means the room's accessible to anyone with a link. Unfortunately, I can't remember a certain person's email, but I'm going to invite them just for giggles, and then probably not let them come in if they do actually click the link. Just fucking around. I have no idea what the hell I'm doing right now. System decided to crap out earlier, so I don't know whether I'm going to get things going or not. My audio okay? I'm not sure what we're doing, Sabella. There is a link there, though. I mean, right now, for the moment, it's available, but not for much longer, probably. Hey, Blue, how's it going? I'm just fucking around right now. I'm thinking about... There's a certain weird little fucktard that keeps trying to invite themselves onto my channel, so I'm thinking about sending them a link to see if they show up and give them this one fucking chance to actually be given a moment of the light of the day before I throw them out of fucking airlock. But I'm not sure if I'm going to bother or not. That I'd have to bug Drag to get his fucking G Plus account because I don't fucking know what he is offhand. Actually, I know it keeps being said, but oh, there we go. Black gray. Okay. It reminds you. Let me turn my bandwidth off for good measure here. Not that it matters. I'm not showing that part of the screen anyway. Actually, since I'm not showing that part of the screen, fuck it. I'll just leave it up. Hey, Black Gray, how you doing?
Hey, it's Blue.
Oh, hey, Blue. What's up, man?
I'm sorry I used my different sock here. I don't know what happened.
That's okay, man. Well, part of it is because corporate account sometimes confuses people on that count. But yeah, I was sitting there thinking to myself earlier, I mean, periodically G-Man will reference Shadow, and it bugs me a little bit because he keeps talking about somebody that he's blocked, which I think is kind of horseshit to say the least. But I was thinking, I mean, recently having had a stroke and I'm not tracking things too well right now. And on a cognitive level, I'm probably at the lowest point I've been since I started on here. So I thought it could be fun to potentially invite him to a hangout. He might actually be able to give me a run for my money for once because, my brain's not working worth shit tonight.
Stop. What's this about a stroke?
I'm talking about the most recent one.
Which was?
About, what, 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, I haven't seen you in a while. I was wondering about that.
Yeah, oh God, I talked about that a little bit earlier. I ended up removing that particular hangout for the hell of it.
Never mind. Why don't you not talk about it at all? Let's move on to something else because you don't want. Yeah, I understand.
No, dude. I did a hangout talking about it earlier, which I ended up removing.
I think I understand. That's fine. Let's talk about something else rather than your health issues because never want to have G-Man or somebody else use that against you later.
Oh, dude, I don't mind. Actually, the stroke's kind of a fun one. You remember the time period, after 4 years of completely fucking ignoring G-Tard, for about 3 weeks, I actually gave a shit and was trying to reach out to him to get him to be more Christ-like and a better person and all that shit.
Sure, you tried.
That was the warm-up to the stroke. From the moment that the stroke actually finally hit, I haven't given a flying shit about him.
Are you saying trying to be Christ-like and improve G-Man's character brought on your stroke?
No, no, no. I'm saying it was a symptom that one was coming. Because, I mean, this is the thing is I'm reaching out to him, and for some fucking weird-ass reason, I had this sudden urge to try to get through to him to get him back on course, back on track, or however you want to frame it. And during that time period, I was having a numbness on the left side of my face on and off here and there. And then once the stroke actually hit from that point on, I'm like, yeah, I don't give a shit. So this might have been the sign of oncoming brain damage, as that goop basically was moving through that one vein, causing little bits of little neurons here and there to die along the way until it finally, once and for all, hit. That was my caring for G-Man, was me having a stroke, a very slow one.
Ooh, man!
And now they're over, done with. Don't give a fuck.
I got into a huge fight last night on a hangout.
I might actually have to see about doing that. I'm having to reconnect the left and right hemispheres. There's a little bit of an issue there, and one of the ways to basically force that reconnection is actually to put myself in stressful situations, which granted can be dangerous because it raises the blood pressure, but fuck it.
Well, I was fighting with Von Helton last night, so how do you think
Van Nightmare, goddamn, no. Stress is one thing, but dealing with that much stupid at one moment, not so much.
No jury will convict me. That's all I gotta say.
Oh, dude, no, not with his fucking track record.
I see Miss Sabella's in the chat. Haven't seen her in a while. Good to see you, girl.
No, Sabella's great. Actually, we very briefly earlier actually had Rev in the chat when I did the last one. And I was like, and of course it's like, prayers for health. I'm like, yeah, great, that'll help. Ugh. What I need is some nice, happy transhumanism.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Build me a fucking cyber brain or some shit, Hell, actually, when I went to the hospital this last time, I was hoping to get a shunt put in, so any additional stuff that would try to cause damage would just drain out. Kind of gross, but, I was hoping for that. But half the health-related things that I brought to their attention, they kind of ignored.
Surprise.
Yeah, great fucking doctors. It's like, well, we realize you're a diabetic and you just had a stroke, so we're going to focus completely on the stroke. And we're going to give you heart-healthy meals that are not safe for diabetics to eat. And the whole thing you mentioned about pissing blood once a month? No. We're going to ignore that entirely. Love the medical care here. Got the fucking insurance, but, it doesn't matter if you have the insurance if the doctors are shit. So I'm a little pissed off and jaded at the moment.
This seems to be a common complaint in Canada, I'm afraid to say.
Dude, I live in Texas.
Oh, well then, why the doctor's shitty there?
Because they don't give a shit. Because they don't have to worry about malpractice that much. You see, most of the hospitals, what they did was, as part of the privatization in the area, is right now all the doctors are considered subcontractors. So you can't sue the hospital, you'd have to sue the doctor directly. And since the hospital doesn't have to worry about lawsuits, they don't give a fuck, and neither do anyone that work there. So you end up with a doctor
file the class action lawsuit.
Dude, the doctor comes and checks in with you once a day, and then you don't see them for the next fucking day. The moment when you see the doctor is when your insurance isn't going to cover another night in the ER at the emergency room. The moment that the bed isn't going to be covered anymore, then they care about getting you processed and the fuck out of there. All they care about is basically how many nights your insurance covers you for, and they're going to do their damnedest to keep you there that long.
Thanks, Obama.
Obama, yeah, right. This is just, this is fucking Texas bullshit. But yeah, it's a thing, and this is actually part of why Texas is ranked 49th in the U.S. for mental health care, because it's the same kind of thing with their mental health system. They hold you there for as long as they can, then they transfer you to another facility. Gee, I wonder why nobody gets better.
You can't leave that state, but maybe you have family ties or whatever.
Oh yeah, I've got my family. Yeah, I have my family here. I got myself, my kids, everything else, and I own property. So yeah.
Yeah. Hold on, I'll be right back. Not
Yeah.
leaving you. Going to get some tea.
Yeah, Kevin came in. Now somebody else did squawk at me. Hey man.
Okay, who's the lucky winner this time? Who are you talking about earlier?
Oh, the person I'm considering sending a link to for the hell of it. Somebody that keeps trying to invite themselves onto my channel that I've never invited here.
I guess I haven't been paying much attention lately, so I don't know who it is.
Okay, who can you name one person that's been on YouTube for a while that if their little name popped up on the request to come in that it'd be 50-50 as whether I'd allow them in or not?
There's a couple names I can think of there. Raw.
Rod actually probably let in for. I've had some fun conversations.
Yeah, you would let Raw in. Yeah.
Raw actually, in terms of his apologetics approach, his view of the whole election thing is kind of interesting and fascinating. He had this really weird analogy for it, which, granted, it's kind of bullshit on a lot of levels, but theologically it makes sense whether I agree with it or not. But
is this person? Oh,
well, Raw's hypothesis is basically it's kind of like you have your soap bottles that are going down the line at the plant that are being filled up as they go down, and not all the bottles are being filled up because of a problem with the machinery. So basically the ones that get filled up are the ones that have souls, and the rest of them are empty. And that's kind of was his apologetic for this whole notion of election.
Blue barrels have souls?
That basically only some people have souls and the others don't. I guess the rest of us are blue barrels.
Okay, is this person someone who's been inviting themselves on your channel for a long time, or is this a recent thing?
Oh no, a long fucking time.
Then I should really know who it is, huh?
Okay, let me put it this way. Take a letter and add hard and feathered after it, and you'll have a guess.
G-Man?
Yeah. Did you actually?
I didn't think it was that easy. I mean,
well,
G-Man's been the flavor of the week for most of 28.
I'm done with him. I'm fucking pretty well bored with him as it is. But since once again, while I'm still blocked on his channel, he mentioned me, and when I flipped to another account to say, dude, why the fuck do you have me blocked then if you keep going to bring my name up kind of thing? And he basically said, because you're annoying, but I might invite myself on your channel so that I can challenge your igtheism, which I'm not an igtheist, but challenge your igtheism and defeat your igtheism. It's like, no, I'm an ignostic, not igtheist. Igtheist would be a theological position. It's a knowledge claim. It's a knowledge position on knowledge, not on theism. In terms of theism, I'm an apatheist. I don't care. And I think if there's a God, I don't see why it would care either. Whatever the hell a God would be, I don't know. Yes, the talking donkey indeed. But yeah, I'm considering, because he keeps trying to invite himself on my channel, I'm considering like, yeah, I'll let him on once and then I'll never let him back again. Not that I think he'd actually show up anyway, truth be known, because he seems to think that I want hits from him, which I don't. Which is why, as you'll notice, there's absolutely no fucking description on this. But there are some questions I wouldn't mind asking him, though, quite honestly. Now, the funny thing is, right now, off the top of my head, I'm not actually remembering any of them, but part of them is what he thinks words mean. Because
he doesn't know what a lot of words mean.
Well, one of them is... what is it? Crap, I just blanked. The religious term for calling someone out.
Rebuking.
Rebuke, thank you. I had to explain to him that rebuke was a word and doesn't just mean something to Christians. And there's a lot of other terms like that that, you know, mean things to people that aren't Christian too, dude. You don't own these words. You know, holy isn't even owned by Christians, for crying out loud. Nor is divine. Divine is definitely not hell. They don't even seem to know what that is. Now, granted, myself personally, in terms of the way Christians present notions of the divine and all this kind of stuff, my biggest problem that I really have with them is this whole idea of it being a relationship with someone they've never met that they only know of because of a book. It's kind of like me saying that I have a relationship with Harry Potter or Dumbledore or Sauron for all it really matters.
Well, you can have a relationship like that with a fictional character, just as long as you understand who it is.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is you can read you can read a story, you can identify with a character and, feel a connection to them to a degree, but that doesn't mean you have an actual relationship with them. And that's where I think it all breaks down because the only thing they have a relationship with is a book because there's no one, there's no real answers there.
Hold on.
I mean, it'd be like it'd be like if I had never met my mother and I claimed to have a relationship with her based upon what somebody told me about her. How's that a relationship? I mean, in any meaningful sense. That one thing's never really made sense to me. It just doesn't. I don't think it ever will, quite honestly.
I've actually been considering making a video on that particular aspect of evangelical theology. You remember the whole tulpa thing that we kind of talked about a while back? Yeah.
Yeah, for anyone out there in viewer world, which it is only like 5 of them anyway, but a tulpa is essentially a construct you create in your mind as a representation of something else that may or may not exist. Now, it is actually something that has grown out of Hindu tradition, if I remember correctly, and the graduation point is figuring out that your tulpa is just imaginary. But anyway. Oh no, Kevin had to mute because Jackie's talking.
What?
Where's Marie?
It's right here.
Oh, hey, hang on. I didn't actually post it properly. It's with the Hangout.
Why is my mouse not working right? Yeah, I've been like
give me a second. Sorry, go ahead.
The more I think about it, like I see more and more parallels between the whole tulpa thing and the way the way Jesus is presented in born again or evangelical Christianity, with ideas like inviting Jesus into your heart, having a personal relationship with Christ, stuff like that, and
creating a construct that has such veracity that you can actually interact with it, talk to it, in some cases even physically perceive it.
And the danger in that, the people that inadvertently create this construct in their heads and then not thinking that, number one, it exists outside their own head, and number two, it's all knowing and all powerful.
Yeah.
And so I was gonna call the video "Your God is a Tulpa" and basically lay out that idea that I just put forth in longer form, because no one's brought it up. Like, I have not heard anyone draw that.
I haven't either, but a lot of people don't know what a tulpa is. Quite honestly,
a lot of people don't know what it is, and it's an interesting enough connection that I think it should be pointed out.
Huh?
And it's even more interesting in that, in terms of the studies I've done with things like the God helmet and what have you, the answers that the person gets are the same answers as if they were basically asking themselves as opposed to asking somebody external. In terms of where that, so to speak, response comes from, it's the same as basically just asking yourself a question.
Especially because it's frightening how real some of these tulpa constructs can be if you really, really work at it. Like, you can see them, you can hear them, and then if you work hard enough, you can see them, and some people can even feel them.
Yeah.
Physically, like touch them.
Yet at the same point, they are completely a figment of the mind.
Yeah, it's like, basically, it would be really interesting to have some like MRI and brain scanning studies done on this, but it seems like distinct neural pathways are actually created in the brain dedicated just to these entities. So it is a separate mind, but it exists in your own head.
Well,
which is really fucked up.
No. It's a separate mind, so to speak, in that, it's like when you create a character for a story or this and that. There's a certain place in your mind that's designated for that allows it to seemingly respond external to the self. But much like with the right and left brain, these two halves of the brain, the verbal and the nonverbal, communicate with each other and work together to form who you are. but you're able to compartmentalize it to a certain degree. So in split brain patients, there's a slightly different persona for the right and left brain, but we can compartmentalize it further and create subsets of this, which would be your tulpas.
Yeah. What disturbs me is that the aspects of the denominations of Christianity that emphasize like the personal relationship, letting Jesus into your heart thing, these people might inadvertently be creating these things, even though, you know, they don't focus on the whole like meditative aspect so much. So they might not be very effective at it, but even if they do, they might be creating these things and they don't know the difference because like they
never get to that
real.
Graduation point of figuring out it's imaginary. Yeah.
They think it's real. Like, oh, if they start hearing a voice, like actually hearing a voice, they think it's Jesus. And they can convince themselves it's Jesus, and no one's going to be able to convince them otherwise because, oh, I heard it. It's real. I know it's real, and you can't tell me otherwise. And I think that's...
This is why Eastern philosophy tells you if you hear anything, throw it away.
Yeah.
If anything happens, throw it away, because that's how you tend to go sane.
Well, in Eastern philosophy, they seem to figure out that the mind has wonderful ways of tricking us.
Yeah.
Which is something that we seem to be missing in Western religions.
You definitely should make a video about that, Kevin. That should be a...
I've been thinking, I mean, I don't make videos very often, but, like, I've been thinking about it.
You do make them count, man.
Yeah, I do. I think I actually have enough to say about this particular stuff, just for my own upbringing. Because I grew up in, like, the type of Christianity I was raised with was like born-again Christianity. And it's different. I think that particular type of Christianity is particularly dangerous in a way that other varieties are not.
Well, I mean, you know, there is at least one question that I'd love to ask G-Man that I know he won't answer, which is, what is it like internally, cognitively, to be a religious zealot? And
I'm not a zealot.
The problem is, to answer that, you'd need a certain level of introspection to even be able to think about it, and he doesn't have that. But
there's a way you can ask that question that, maybe if you don't use the word zealot, he might answer it reasonably.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I would.
Jordy's right. You should ask G-Man to describe what's going on cognitively when he thinks about Jesus, about God, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I would ask him, like, do you hear God talking to you, or do you think it? Oh, and here's the real kicker, and a point that I would want to raise in the video. How do you evangelicals that truly believe you have a personal relationship with Jesus, how do you differentiate the voice of God from your own? You know,
I'm going to shave the damn beard soon. I have a couple of hairs that keep going up my nose. It is fucking obnoxious. Little whiskers just get twisted the wrong way, and I'm like, ah! Stabbed myself in the nose. Okay. Incidentally, there is a link out there. Hangout is open at this point. I've got the little... Hang on. That little funky lock-looking thing actually means it's open. The other one is... Let me show it on the stream here right quick. There we go. And that one there is for when it's not. Let me put it back here. Okay, change.
Maybe I should invite my friend Von Helton.
Oh
no.
How about
now?
not?
The wonderful thing about corporate hangouts is that you can invite whoever you want. And when they try to join, a little screen comes up says if I should allow them in or not, and I can just say no. So you can invite whoever you want. I'm more than happy to say nope, 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 nope.
Von Helton, Debbie Duran. Hello, Jackie.
Debbie's kind of fucked off.
True
it doesn't matter. I mean, Debbie had her brief moment she basically popped up once, so we got to answer the question of how long would she last in a shuffle. The answer was negative seconds because I clicked decline on her.
Yeah.
Red's rhetoric.
I don't like. The thing is, here's the thing: is I know that there are some people that have an issue with Red. I don't necessarily have any problem with him. I mean, Red is Red. You know, he is who he is, and it's as simple as that. The problem is that there are certain people he has blocked that is an issue.
No, he unblocked me. The only person he seems to have.
I'm going to request that we move on.
Oh, we're moving on in a month. I thought we were basically done.
Yeah, the only person he has blocked is Pew. We're gonna be meeting him in the fall.
Oh, he has someone else blocked.
Oh yeah.
Okay, guys.
But yeah, it's obviously if someone wanted to join and had anyone in here blocked, standard shuffle rules, they'd have to unblock him for the duration of the call. That's as simple as that. That's just standard decorum here. Now, on the other hand, if their name is Beasley or any semblance thereof, they're going to be thrown out the door by the moment I hear their voice, because I can't stand that retard.
Atheist Jesus, the Good Wolf.
No, but okay, if it's the actual atheist, if it's the I think I'm Jesus guy, dude, I would let him in a fucking heartbeat, because Lord Stephen Christ is fucking hilarious to play with.
He's been in my. He showed up in my feed pretty recently. He's apparently in jail for threatening Trump.
Jail.
Like he made threats
I
to
thought
kill
he
the president.
made threats against Obama.
Well, now it's Trump. He's making threats against Trump now.
Oh,
So
fucking
he's actually in jail.
Who actually is in jail?
Lord Stephen Christ.
Remember him?
What?
Oh,
Lord
wow.
Stephen Christ is in jail?
Yeah.
Yes.
Say what?
Yes.
Okay.
There's this group that Lusty McButt moderates that I'm in that like I get updates on people like Von Helton and Lord Stephen Christ because they post a lot about those guys in there.
Are they also the ones that follow Corky around?
Is what it no, it's called Trolls, Haters, and Naysayers. No, Corky. Yeah, I only know about Corky through.
Well, there's like a specific group that still follows Corky around to this day.
I only know about him through Agent of Doubt. Actually, I was in one of AOD's hangouts. Like that, I was in a hangout with him, and it was one of AOD's hangouts.
Well,
That's the only reason I know about him. He's nuts.
What's something Bravo? What did he use?
Nick Bravo.
Nick Bravo, yeah. Nick
Bravo.
Bravo is a fucking weirdo. If you ever want to see a weird video, you just type in Nick Bravo, and then just I'm winning, because it's just him in his car screaming, saying I'm winning over and over and over again. It's hilarious.
That sounds about right.
Why would somebody watch?
Keep saying it till you believe it, guy. Keep saying it till you believe it.
Well, you know, Nick Bravo, right?
I do not. I'm not well aware of him.
No,
I'm surprised actually.
Maybe I've come across him, but
he's like
He's
OG
one of-
troll fodder, Happy Cabby.
he's one of those lol cows that goes like way back. He's on Agent of Doubt's radar.
He used to live with Happy Cabby, bald guy.
Oh really?
oh
Sounds
wow,
like Golem.
that's enough right there.
Sounds like Golem, sorta.
I don't
Sounds like
even know
Golem.
this.
That's a great one.
I saw the. I just want to say two things. One, I'm a little sad that nobody took note of the fact that I changed my name to Juche follower on Discord.
No one took note because no one cares.
Prudent golf course.
Have you figured how much attention we actually pay to that Discord group?
Yeah, it's
Fair
Skype,
enough.
then Discord, then Hangouts.
I thought
Or no,
people would
Skype,
find that
Hangouts,
funny,
Discord.
but
I
whatever.
didn't notice. Yeah.
I changed
I
it
thought it was
back.
Prudent
I just went
Golf
back to my
Course.
old name. Now I have the Croatian flag because, go Croatia for the World Cup, I guess.
They're going through. They won today. They crushed Argentina today.
Yeah, I'm so happy about because my mom's side of the family is Croatian, and since the U.S. didn't qualify, I guess I'll be rooting for Croatia the rest of the way.
Oh, your mother's
really
family must have been jumping up and down today.
I just
I'm
want
so
Brazil
sad
to
that
lose.
I'm so sad that the U.S. didn't qualify. I don't know who to root for now.
I don't care who wins as long as Brazil loses.
Why,
I've
why
got
do
it
you want
right.
Brazil?
Why do you want
What's
Brazil
wrong
to
with-
lose?
I want Brazil to
Because-
lose because okay, back when I was running the 12th Tribe role playing game through Google
Oh,
Hangouts,
that's right.
there was after one of the games we decided, screw it, let's do a post game hangout and just chill out and talk. So all of a sudden, while I'm running this thing, at the time, this was on the old channel, I had like, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 viewers at the time. And along comes this flood, and the number jumps to like 100, 200, 300. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? And
Yeah.
it
It
didn't
was
occur to me
a
what
bunch
the
of-
name of the hangout was.
It was a
And
bunch of
it was
It was the-
over 500, actually by the end, over 2,000 people coming to what they think was trolling a bunch of Americans talking about the soccer game. No, that's not the game we were talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah,
This
so
was
I got trolled.
It was the fact that it was named
You could tell everybody
post-game
knew
hangout.
Tony was
Yeah.
from Brazil.
And it was a bunch of Brazilians coming to just be little dipshits. And yeah, so I have a grudge against Brazil. They can fuck off.
13.
Was that the was that because they made it to the
Sorry,
semifinals last
I've
time?
got to hang on. I got to put my nuance in there to correct that. I don't have a problem with Brazil or Brazilians. I have a problem with well, going back to the whole zealous thing, zealot Brazilian soccer fans. That's where the
Well,
issue.
they got their ass kicked in the last semifinal so bad that kind of makes up for it. I kind of want Brazil to bounce back from their.
Oh no, I don't want them to win again because if they do, I'll feel morally obligated to make another post-game hangout so they can threaten to flag my channel some more.
Well, that's how you. Well, you said fanatical. You have only problems with fanatical Brazilian soccer fans, not all Brazilians, but that pretty much is all Brazilians, to be honest.
Well, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know. I don't know all Brazilians.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's soccer, then jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu fans are just as bad. And MMA fans. So
this is the thing, though. If you ever wanted to go through Brazil and just trigger everybody, wear a T-shirt that says Germany 7, Brazil 1.
You won't make it.
Do you want to exit Germany? Or do you want to exit Brazil?
Right on the spot.
Do you want to get stabbed? Are you insane?
Okay, kicking Jordy out of the room.
No.
No.
No. I'm not saying
No
I'm
threatening to
I'm saying
stab.
Brazilians are. No, I'm not going to stab him. He's just going to get stabbed.
Yeah, it was more of a warning that you wear that kind of shirt in Brazil, you're probably asking to get stabbed.
That reminds me of I used to test myself. Like I'd never eat glass. I'd never set my feet on fire. I'd never run through downtown naked. These sort of things. And I was trying to think
I've never called Trump a con man at a Trump rally. Yeah.
Right. I was trying to think of the most intense one I could think of, and here it is. I'd sooner say something bad about Manny Pacquiao's mother on the streets of Manila.
That's cute.
Oh, wow. Non-sports people? Fuck it.
No, I got it. That's cute.
Yeah, you're the only one, yeah. Never mind, moving on.
That one rang over my head. I don't sports. I just don't.
I will defame Anderson Silva in Brazil.
Not that big on the sports thing, then.
No, you won't. You can say that up here, but you won't do that up there. I'm stopping talking sports too.
I didn't.
Shadow will bounce me. Yeah, let's get back to G-Man.
No, let's not. I don't.
I'm kidding.
Here's the thing. Like I was saying, it was only during the warm up to the stroke that I gave a shit, and now that I've had it, it's just whatever it was motivating me is gone. Which is fucking hilarious because he could have tried to use that as a theological argument for proof of God if he wanted, but it also require him accepting that he is a horrible fucking Christian and needs to get right and start acting Christ-like. So it's a dual-edged sword.
So I see that you guys been going at it with Benny Ocean, which was pretty entertaining.
Oh, fuck him.
I haven't been going at it with Benny.
I have. There have been JD has started 2 threads in the past 2 or 3 days that are each over 100 or 2 in one case over 300 comments now. But yeah, basically Benny is defending the Trump administration's policy of separating immigrant children from their parents and putting them in cages, and shitting on anyone who disagrees with him.
Well, the policy that Trump reversed the other day, yeah. What are they going to say now?
I heard something. It was one of these things that was going around on Facebook, and it kind of goes enough in the general direction of my bias against the administration that I highly doubt that it's actually accurate. But there was some claim that some of the youngest children that were being taken were, instead of being returned to their parents, were being put up for adoption to evangelics.
I hadn't heard of that.
And that it's some foundation, the bosses that's doing the adoptions. I highly doubt that it's actually accurate.
I would look into that.
I should try to see if I can find any information on it. If so, that's deplorable, but I highly doubt it. And this is the thing is, whether it be Facebook or what have you, when something comes along that gets your ire up and it just seems to align a little too well with your negative opinions of individual or group or what have you, you really need to do your fact checking at that point, because chances are if it lines up too well, it's probably bullshit.
Facebook is cancer when it comes to politics.
Yeah.
I hate scrolling through it just because it gets me pissed off. And it's honestly, some of the anti-Trump stuff on Facebook pisses me off just as much as the, retards that are in favor of him.
Yeah.
Twitter, it depends. You have to filter it out. Like some of the people who are more professionals, they can be okay. You have to pick the right people. And then there's just
Actually, the thing about Trump that troubles me is how many religious leaders there are propping him up, even though, based on what's actually in that book, they should be completely opposed to him, I'd think.
Yeah.
Money speaks, man. Money speaks.
No, this isn't a money speak thing so much. I don't think he's simply, like you giving donations to these religious folks. I mean, I think that politics has become more of the proverbial football team of you have to support your team.
Well, that's part of it, but I mean, a lot of these like big name pastors, their congregation more likely supports them, so they have to make sure.
Yeah, my mom and stepdad are definitely much more so Republicans than they are Christians. Pisses me off.
The one thing that I think there was a report that just came out from the AP. It was actually a lot of this actually happened under the Obama administration, though. But I wouldn't be surprised if it came out during the Trump stuff. It's actually some really scary stuff. They were showing that a lot of the abuses that were going on in these immigrant detention centers. There was one part. I mean, again, a lot of these are just testimony. But apparently, there's been some reports that there was one guy who, a few years ago, had reported that he was literally stripped naked and tied down to a chair for a couple days. I mean, some of the stuff I can post it up again, but it kind of sounds like Abu Ghraib for children, to be honest.
Honestly, with some of the pictures I've seen from the inside, those camps disturb me on so many levels. Have you seen the pictures of Trump that are supposed to be on the walls, in some of them at least?
No.
Yeah, there's pictures of former presidents and himself with quotes under them.
Ugh.
I don't, at 13, I don't get pissed off at a lot of things, but that actually made me furious. Like,
dude, it's creepy as shit. It makes you think of like re-education camps and Hitler Youth and crap like that.
Oh my God, that actually made me mad. Sorry, go ahead, Prudent.
I was just going to say, like, today, just in particular, has been a really bad day for headlines. The other one that really pissed me off was the ACLU. Well, there's been a leak from the ACLU. They're saying that they're gonna change their guidelines for how they defend certain cases, meaning they're not going to defend people who they consider, quote unquote, hateful, which goes against a lot of their earlier values, because they were pretty notorious.
I mean, if you were a KK member or a Nazi or what have you, they'd be the ones to go to defend you. Yeah. Well,
yeah, but the thing is, I mean, again, like, even horrible, bigoted people still have rights too. I mean, that's just the way our society, ought to work. And I think there is at least a value in that, because the whole point is the whole purpose of defending them is to at least have some kind of moral leverage over them. If you're going to take away certain people's rights, or if you're under certain situations, like, how could you really complain if the boot's on your foot sometime, or the boot's on your face at some point in the future?
Are you talking about the ACLU?
Yeah.
Yeah, that pissed me off as well. Like, it's a really nice thing to be able to stuff in the face of, like, people on the right, like evangelicals who fucking hate the ACLU.
Hang on, though. My guess would be that it's a temporary stopgap. And the reason why I'm saying that is with all the Trump-appointed judges and this and that.
I agree.
They might be worried about some dangerous precedents being set.
Well, that's right. I was going to say, I get it. There's a lot of like right-wing evangelicals who hate the ACLU, even though the ACLU once defended Jerry Falwell in one of his property cases.
Exactly. Like, it's good to be able to bring up to them the fact that the ACLU defends people on the other side as well. Like, they serve a very important role.
Yeah, they've generally been a principled organization, and I'm kind of worried they're starting to erode those away. Because they were, up until a couple years ago, you could easily make the case that this is probably one of the most principled American organizations. Now, I'm worried the path they're going.
But here's the thing. If the reason why they're doing it is because they're afraid in the current climate of dangerous precedents being set, that would then be court record and court precedents which could be cited for decades, because they're worried about with all the basically, the lack of humanity that we are showing towards ourselves and one another, and all the bigotry and all this other stuff. They're worried about have potentially winning cases that could set precedents that would basically make it easier for people to commit hate crimes. I could understand them wanting to back off on that.
Could I interject for a minute and add something here?
Go for it.
Yeah, we're talking about the ACLU decision.
I figured. So the biggest case I could remember where the ACLU actually lost half of its membership was the National Socialist Party of America versus the village of Skokie.
That's correct.
Yeah, and during this case, Nazis wanted to march through a small Jewish town or a neighborhood, and of course the citizens there would not have it. And the ACLU, led by a Jewish lawyer whose parents or grandparents died in the Holocaust, stood up for the Nazi Party in that time, said, look here, what we're doing is, look, I hate these guys. I don't agree with what they're saying, but everyone has a right to be represented. And defending free speech is not just about defending popular speech, because popular speech doesn't need defending. It's popular for a reason. Half the ACLU's members left that organization, but one man, the lawyer there who stood up for his principles, was consistent, did something that did not make him, did something that was very counterintuitive to what we'd be inclined to do ourselves, and did this during the 1970s.
Yeah, when was it? This was like 78 or 79, as I recall.
77.
Okay.
It was decided in 77. Now, we might have a current climate of racism, maybe something that's surged here, more since maybe the Obama administration. But I guarantee you that if I was a minority and I had to choose between living in the United States during the 1970s and living in the United States now, I would still choose now.
Yeah, that's kind of a no-brainer for anyone who knows anything about history.
Right, and if we're talking about current climate and the ACLU maybe changing their policy given this current climate, well, the climate in the 1970s was far worse.
No, you're completely missing what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Now, first off, the concern is the potential of setting precedent, but the thing is, with the kind of judges, etc., that are being appointed right now, a lot of them, basically, imagine what would happen if you had, in that case, with the Nazis wanting to march. More so, Nazis trying to defend themselves against some kind of hate crime, beyond simple marching. And you have somebody that's appointing judges that are sympathetic to the Nazi cause, that are more likely to let somebody off for committing an actual aggressive hate crime. The danger is if a precedent is set in that kind of climate where you have judges being put in that are sympathetic to people that are committing actual hate crimes.
Yeah, but the ACLU's policy that Pruden, the article that he posted earlier today that he's concerned about, has more to do with speech issues than actual hate crimes.
Yeah, it has more to do with, defending hateful individuals for their speech, not necessarily for specific violent actions.
And if I might also add,
but are these people that are promoting violence through speech?
Well, okay, but there's
Yeah, you are allowed to promote violence through speech to a certain extent already in American law. You can do it up to the point where you're directly advocating the destruction of property or attacking a person. And
we call that lawless imminent action. That's been a precedent set by the very famous 1973 Supreme Court case, Hess versus Indiana.
And that was done in defense of the Klan marching on Washington. Now, you could say something along the lines of, I think we should overthrow the United States government. That's not imminence. What is imminent is like directly calling for something, like putting someone in immediate danger.
Someone should fire a mortar at the White House West Wing located at these streets.
As an example.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, also, hang on, Kevin.
whenever you make comments like that, just as an example, always make sure you precede it and follow it with as an example, because if some idiot were to listen to it and take it as a legitimate thing, then you're
for the
you should,
NSA agent listening to this hangout right now.
Right. So the thing about
like I said, I can't be arrested or held accountable when I say, Von Helton, I hope you kill yourself. Von Helton, go kill yourself.
Yeah, but
as an example,
no, but that's different than like something that could be seen as a threat against the president.
Yeah, but if you were to say, like, somebody go out and, you know, light Von Helton's house on fire, that would be an example of lawless imminence action.
And another thing, usually when courts
I've
cite...
never said that.
Well, at the same point, you had, what was it, fucking O'Reilly for months and months saying that somebody should kill Dr. Tiller, and eventually somebody did it, yet there was no consequences for him, and I think there should have been.
Yeah, I'm not going to speak to the Tiller or baby killer case or example, but I will say this. If one is citing precedent, then it's usually something that's argued by the defense, usually your legal team. And if somebody is going to defend racists or mount a defense that is less likely to be taken as dangerous precedent, I would rather it be the ACLU than whichever group of lawyers they hire to appeal to the racist judge.
I don't know. I don't know. We've been seeing a lot of really fucked up precedents lately, so I'm still worried about that. That and how many of the things pertaining to like choice laws and what have you that have been just fucking appalling, but managing to go through. And right now, there's a lot of court cases along those lines that people are trying to push through in attempts to set a precedent. Well, so to speak, the setting is good because of the current political climate.
Are you talking about the cake incidents?
No, not just those. There's actually a whole flood of them, even more so pertaining to things like abortion than the gay rights.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, I mean, with abortion, that's not about speech, though. That's more along the lines of...
It's a choice. It's a freedom. But anyway, I'm just saying that it's more along those lines. And some of the things pertaining to religious liberties as well that have been going through, I find a little bit atrocious. But the problem is the danger of setting precedents. And there's a lot of these groups that, well, you have a very conservative Supreme Court are trying to basically force this shit through.
Yeah. I mean,
because, you know, if we actually had a balanced court that more reflected the American people, yeah, as opposed to, I don't like people that basically come to their decisions legalistically based upon their religion or what have you, as opposed to what the fucking law of the land is.
Well, here's the thing, though. I've looked at a few of those cases, and I don't think that people cite their religion. And you might say, well, it's still a motivator somewhere in the background. Usually the precedence they set is pretty solid. Like, there's a recent case example about a private company funding contraception. You know, you guys know the one I'm talking about.
I vaguely remember hearing it. I forget. Actually, sorry. I know I had heard about it. I've forgotten everything subsequently.
Well, essentially, people have stated something along the lines of, oh, well, if this religious group can withhold using the insurance to fund abortifacients, then what can't they do? Can I withhold everything based off of my religion? Well, no, that's not what the court ruling said or gave in terms of precedence. All they gave in precedence was, look, since Obamacare is a thing, and it is within the realm of their power to provide this themselves, then you don't really need to issue this to the private company. And that's how.
Hold on just a second.
Right.
I don't think companies should be permitted to decide whether one of their employees can use birth control or not. I think that's bullshit.
They didn't decide. They said, no, that's not what was said.
They decided they weren't going to cover it, wasn't it? Or were refusing to cover it.
They decided they were going to refuse to cover it so long as the government themselves had a viable insurance program, and they did, which was Obamacare. They could have done it themselves if they wanted to.
Yeah,
that's
fair. No. That is still incredible bullshit. And the reason why is you work at a company and you, through that company, actually set up to get your healthcare program through them. Now, after you set up that healthcare program, that covers you. You've been paying into that for however long, and now they want you to have that plus Obamacare? And at that point, do you know the hassles that's involved if you have two different insurance carriers for that? It's putting undue burden on people, frankly.
Oh, it's not well, it's not a matter of so it is actually a matter of what was decided given an earlier precedent set during the Clinton administration back during the 1990s. And of course, if you're going to say precedent, you're going to have to go back to what was done in the past. And if it's an undue burden, then it was an undue burden not put by the fault of the private company, but by the fault of the government themselves.
By allowing a different, secondary kind of coverage, that somehow moves the burden onto the government when the person already has their private coverage through the company.
By taxing individuals for by essentially taxing individuals to fund a secondary insurance company, while in addition to that forcing or legislating that companies ought to privatize their own insurance on top of that.
Well, a company that you're working for that offers an insurance package, what you'd basically be doing from what you were just saying is forcing them to then also get federal coverage in addition to that, thus incurring additional expenses and forcing them to carry two different providers just because they want some kind of birth control. And I find that to be an undue burden, forcing them to pay for the secondary federal coverage when they already have a primary coverage through the initial company that
So I think
through the initial insurance company, that that's provided for them through their employer.
So I think this is a little beyond the point of what I was getting at. The point is whether or not it was a good ruling or not, however you want to take that. Personally, I think the ruling should have been you're an adult, buy your own birth control. Putting that to the side, my point was...
Okay, hang on a second, though. The kind of coverage that they're talking about for the birth control that's covered would be like an IUD, things like that.
No, it was an abortifacient. It consisted of things like Plan B, which
don't know any companies that cover Plan B. I don't know any plans that cover that. Now, at the same point. Most IUDs actually prevent implantation of the egg, which I believe, according to some, would be an abortive. I can't say the word
abortifacient.
Yeah.
In any case, my point was they don't just. A lot of these judges do not legislate on the basis of their religion, and by taking, and usually people just take these rulings they just don't happen to like, and issue it as a point-blank thing. When if you look at it, you have judges like Roberts, who is himself a Roman Catholic, who has swung in the direction of supporting same-sex marriage.
I am not saying that judges inherently lack, basically lack common sense, that they're going to necessarily do this. But what I'm saying is that the court right now is being stacked with people that are more likely to rule in a certain way, which is why they're trying to push things through to try to get these precedents.
That's how it's always been done. Every administration stacks the court with judges who are going to push for policies more in line with their viewpoint. It happens under both. It's not something that's new. Personally, I think it's the equivalent of saying, look, because a certain amount of judges interpreted our piece of paper in this way, therefore this is how we rule. Sans what any other part of the government thinks. Like, whether or not you agree with it is tangential. That's just how it is. And the only way around it is either just abandon the whole constitutional process, or...
incidentally, for the external chat, Mike, I completely fucking agree. If you're not going to cover birth control, you shouldn't cover Viagra. I absolutely agree with that.
You shouldn't be forced to cover any kind of medical expense, personally. I'd go that far.
I'm sorry, what?
Whoa.
Oh, I don't think...
You don't think a health insurance company should be forced to cover any medical expense?
I don't think any private company should be forced to provide, by dint of law, any kind of healthcare.
Then what would be the point of having an insurance company?
I mean, you could voluntarily sign up and pay.
So you could sign up and pay for a healthcare company that wouldn't
wait,
be
are we
required to
talking?
actually provide you with
but,
healthcare?
No,
The
no.
whole point. Okay, but the whole point of having what employer provided healthcare is that it's a benefit that comes at a lower cost to you than you would have to just pay in the open insurance market. I think that's the benefit of it.
That's the whole point. And, it's like pre-existing conditions and the requirement for having to have that covered. I'm a diabetic, for example. If I go out and were to get, a new job under the old guidelines, they could say, well, fuck it, we're not going to cover you because you've been a diabetic for years.
No, yes, they could. Hypothetically, people could always.
The problem is when they don't inform you this until after you've signed up, which is actually fairly common.
Which is, and that's fair enough. Then again, there's always alternatives then to insurance as well. And I am well aware of the arguments of why they went through the route of going through employers rather than just universalizing healthcare or providing a government option. Or
if you're asking if I think we should have universal healthcare, absolutely.
Right.
I'd much rather that. Oh, here comes speaking of Mike here. Let me.
I really just want to get back to the topic at hand, though, because I don't want to make this about insurance or about medical care. The problem, right? I know we just got on this. I was just using it as a case example, where because I thought you were making a point about judges ruling on the basis of religion. The point I was just trying to get across was, look, if you don't want them to be elected by the president and Congress and have them stacked in one way, well, the only other options are you could abolish the Supreme Court and the Constitution and have some other kind of system, or
that could probably lead to a crisis.
Yeah. The second option is you could have the judges get elected, in which case they're basically politicians, like any other politicians, and in which case they're just a puppet to popular opinion.
Oh, fuck that.
Or the third
yeah, Federalist 78 actually means something to me. Just, I want to put that out there.
And let's see, and of course there's the option where, yeah, actually that's pretty much it. Oh, actually there's another option by, hey.
We can hear you, your mic's working.
How are you doing overall?
Pretty good.
Fair enough?
Yeah.
I just had a quick...
We're talking about...
Oh, sorry.
Something.
I just had a
second. Sorry, go ahead.
I just had a quick point to make, going back to what you were saying about you said no company should be obligated to provide any kind of medical benefits.
No, if they want to do that, they can voluntarily do that while they employ.
Okay, and to a certain extent, I agree with that. I just know the insurance companies would have a fit with that because they'd have no market.
Sucks to be them.
Yeah, I know. I'm just thinking that was the first thing that entered my head. You got a point, though. I mean,
there's not a thing wrong with what you just said, and God bless you for claiming that right.
There's a difference, though, between saying that a company should be forced to provide medical coverage, and when you are providing medical coverage, that the company should be able to have the right to choose what is and isn't covered under the normal program by that insurance company.
Well, I mean, in terms of what they cover...
Because you're buying an insurance package.
Right, I'm buying
and the company's saying, well, here, you're buying a package, but we're not going to cover anything that this group is religiously opposed to? Well, but what if the employee isn't of that religion? You're basically, at that point, the company's forcing its religion on its employees, and that I've got a problem with.
Well, I mean, you're an adult. You could buy your own birth control.
I'm totally at peace with this. I don't hate you. I don't resent you. I don't have any bad feelings or unfinished emotional business with you.
Okay.
What?
Who's he talking to?
One of us.
Okay. Well, no. But then you set precedents like saying, Okay, well, you can buy your own birth control. Okay, you can buy your own blood transfusions. I mean,
yeah, that's now that
you
might
see
be
what
a
I'm
little
saying?
bit.
You know,
It might be a slippery slope argument, but there's a point because in terms of blood transfusions, what if the company's is run by Jehovah's Witnesses? Yeah.
you read
I
my
would
mind.
not.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't trust a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses with my medical care, whether it's blood transfusions or not.
But that's the thing is the doctors aren't the Jehovah's Witnesses. The insurance company aren't the Jehovah's Witnesses. The Jehovah's Witnesses would be the employers. So
And, you know,
upon finding that out, if you need that blood transfusion, you'd have to effectively quit working there, find another job, and apply for new insurance somewhere.
and it's hard to find new jobs, you know, in this economy too, especially for young workers out, you know, fresh out of college. I mean, that seems like it seems like an incredible risk to put on other people. That's
Fair enough.
Fair enough. Right. So it is a bit of a slippery slope, and I will grant that. But in terms of Jehovah's Witnesses and that particular case that's applied, I believe even Obamacare.
Let's go to something a little bit more obscure, just for fun here.
Right.
You
So-
work for you have this massive company, and let's just, for the hell of it, let's just say it's a gun manufacturer, just for fun. And the owner of the gun manufacturer is a member of the Church of Christian Science.
I
Right.
don't believe that's true at all.
They wouldn't fund any kind of medical care.
Yeah, I'm just using this as an extreme example. That if you set it so that based upon the religion of the person that runs the company, they can then decide what kind of care people get. This is why I think that we need to watch about dangerous precedents regarding that, because if somebody is a member of the Church of Christian Science, they could refuse to cover any medicine.
Okay, so a couple of things. First off, the only reason I said you could buy your own birth control as opposed to buy your own blood transfusion was the issue at hand, and I'm just saying that's not as bad of a consequence. Just taking
once you set that kind of precedent, they can call on that precedent for something more severe. That's what I'm talking about earlier.
Just to finish off my point here, all I was saying was it's not on its own, regardless of any other circumstance, it's not that big a deal, because even something like the IUD out of pocket, that's $150 to $250.
You're missing the point, dude.
I know. I'm going to get to the main point about the blood transfusions and everything else. If you do not like the insurance the company is providing for you, then either work with another company or seek your own insurance, rather than opt out of the insurance that the employer is offering for you. That's another one.
What do you do?
A third option is you could actually carry out market reforms that make healthcare more affordable in a lot of other areas. So rather than licensing doctors, I'd advocate for switching over to a system of certification. With license,
that's a good deal for you.
Here's the situation. The problem is that the employees working for a company don't necessarily have the same religious beliefs, and you shouldn't be, so to speak, allowing the religion of the person that's running the company to basically dictate your religious viewpoints on this issue. And on some levels you are. Now the danger is that what we're talking about is once a precedent is set, it doesn't apply to just that one situation, but other situations as well. Sorry, Fry, go ahead. Or Fryer, rather.
You know what? And let me just be honest with you, but that's not what we're talking about.
That's a soundboard. That's Dr. Phil.
Oh, okay.
Should we kick the guy out?
We should kick the guy out.
He's been a distraction.
Yeah, see.
I want you to start living as a gay woman, and I want you to start having a gay relationship.
Oh, well, that was fun for a moment. Gone.
Actually,
I didn't recognize the voice there.
I'm surprised it took me so long to realize that was Dr. Phil.
Well, the thing is, like, I knew something was up with the guy. I thought he was just interjecting, some complete irrelevancies. But I'm thinking,
I mean, even if you're running a soundboard and you manage to maintain some degree of what's going on, I don't really care.
Yeah, but that was just, it got to a point. I was like, wait a minute. No,
yeah, it's like now you're just interrupting. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, real quick, what I was going to say too is we also are kind of missing a point too in terms of a corporation is an entity. It is not a human being, and therefore can a corporation attribute its own rights as personhood? In other words, we're talking about, like, I can't remember his name, but the guy, the CEO, Green, I think is his last, of Hobby Lobby. Yeah. He basically dictated the corporate philosophy and religious approach on, the birth control and everything like that he would deny his employee. And I think I did look it up, Heathen. He did provide Viagra. Mm-hmm. And would not provide birth control morning after. But anyway, my point is, you get into a point there where are you infringing on a company's religious freedom when it technically doesn't have any religious freedom as a corporate entity?
Yes, it does. And here's why. Already under the Constitution, you actually do have companies that have protections for other certain freedoms. Take, for example, freedom of speech. Technically, when certain reporters write something for their media company, that company possesses ownership of that piece. So because that company owns it, does the government therefore have the right, because if it's not a person and the First Amendment doesn't apply to it, to censor it because corporations aren't persons and thus do not get First Amendment protections?
Okay, hang on. Is a company allowed to discriminate based upon religion?
Is it? No.
No.
Isn't that essentially what they're doing, though?
No, because the people that
they're trying to force their employees to follow some of the precepts of their religious belief.
No, they're not. They're not forbidding them from actually going out and purchasing these things themselves. They're just They're just not funding something
based upon religious bias.
Whatever the case may be, they're just not.
Now, if their employee, okay. Now, here's the thing: if they're employees of a different religion that has, or of a different viewpoint, why should they have to follow the religious viewpoint of the person running the company? I think that's discriminatory.
They don't have to. That no one is forcing their employer. No one is forcing their employee to not. To go out, no one is forcing their employee not to go out and get these things for themselves. They can if they want to.
If you basically, we're not going to cover what your ailment is if you don't agree with our, or what your condition is, unless you agree with our religious viewpoint.
If I was to decide, look, I'm going to, if I came into a lot of money and I was of the position where I could fund somebody's medical services on the exchange that they convert to my religion, and if they don't, then they don't get my money, I haven't robbed them of anything. Granted, what I'm doing is fairly dickish, I'll grant you that much, but I haven't actually stopped, but I'm not actually forcing them to follow my religion. They've been presented an opportunity and they can decide to either accept or decline it.
Okay, so basically you should be able to hire people that are only of your religion then.
I didn't say that. What I
just
said
think
was,
it's a slippery slope because you get to pick and choose. You know, you really do. Like, if you're offering a health plan, the health care is not provided. The health plan is provided by the company, but the health care is provided by a medical professional, a healthcare professional. That healthcare professional is bound by the Hippocratic Oath. They can't, you know, what I'm saying, like if you were talking a slippery slope, they'll treat people regardless of their healthcare plan. The money comes later. Doctors always will treat. They have to do that. But so in other words, if the plan is provided by the company, they can't then decide, well, if you go in there and you get stitches, well, we won't do that because we don't like silk because of Deuteronomy or something. You know, I mean, it is, I feel it in a way it's a slippery slope. And why does it have to start with birth control? Is it, you know what I mean? Like, you kind of have to talk about, well, wait a minute, personhood begins with viability. That's a fact in terms of law. So, I mean, even if you believe it begins at conception,
I mean,
that's fine.
Going back
but it
to
doesn't.
The Church of Christian Science, though.
Yeah.
Essentially, if you allow somebody to dictate what is and isn't covered by healthcare, based upon the religion of the owner, regardless of what the religion of the person is, then in the case of a group like the Church of Christian Science, then you could say that you're not going to cover any medicine whatsoever with your plan.
They don't. Yeah, I'd say they're
or surgery for that matter, because they only believe in prayer for it. You know, we've had kids die from ailments that could have been solved by simple antibiotics because they think that prayer must be the case. So they effectively wouldn't have to. They could offer a plan that literally covers nothing.
There's also something to be considered too in terms of the Commerce Clause. The company may be owned, you know, in terms of a private board of directors and everything, but if it does business with the public, the Commerce Clause in that aspect comes into play. I mean, we're talking lunch counter science here.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't know if that went over anybody's head, but my point was, if, you know, we're going back to the point where, like, we refuse to serve African Americans at our establishment because reasons. Well, if you're doing business with the public, it's almost as if the Commerce Clause should come into play, and, you know, you can't just start saying, well, this, and that. You know, like, I think there was a sign that was put up on a baker's sign that said, "We will not bake cakes for those who have a second, third, or fourth marriage because divorce is a sin." So anyway, you know, it gets into that. So I don't know.
That almost makes me wonder if it was kind of a dig in the direction of the people that are refusing to cook them for gay weddings.
Oh, it was a joke. They were not serious about it, but they were trying to prove a point. They were like saying, if every sin is weighed the same as homosexuality, then how about this? We'll make cakes for gay weddings, but we won't do cakes for, you know what I mean? Like, I bet you the guy who built designed the cake for the homosexual couple would have no problem baking and designing a cake for someone on their fourth marriage. You know, It's hypocritical.
I'd have to agree. I really think it is, because you're sitting there and you take this one particular thing, which honestly, not only is one of the lesser condemned sins, but also it shows, as far as I'm concerned, the bias of the author when you're dealing with Paul, for example. Because when you're dealing with Jesus and what he actually said in the Bible, there's that lovely little talk with him and the eunuch, in which he's basically fine with the eunuch getting into heaven, but at the same point, you have Paul condemning gays, which I think the two of these, because you have one that's the sexual other, so to speak, and you have another that has the same kind of sexual otherness, in that they're not a part of the standard binary, and you're condemning one but not the other, regardless of the fact that there's a very specific context to what's written in Romans.
Yeah, it's not just that, though. Jesus also claimed to be the God of the Old Testament, and the God of the Old Testament also said that homosexuality was punishable by stoning.
However, that particular rule, is that something that was passed down directly from God? Can we show that? Or was that something that was merely held by the tribe at the time? Because let's keep in mind, one of the first commandments they were given was be fruitful and multiply, yet at the same point initially they were intended to be fruitful and multiply with their brothers, sisters, etc., which then later that was rescinded and changed, so you can't have direct relations with brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers. These things do change over time, so is this something simply passed down at the time, that this was about the growing of the tribe, or was this something that really just was a commandment of God that said absolutely never no?
Well, one thing that also gets me, though, is the hang up on stoning, like you said, stoning homosexuals to death. How come there aren't people out there going into Red Lobsters and murdering everybody at the table?
Because there's a difference between the natural law and the civic law that was drawn in the Old Testament. So there's the civic law, the natural law, and the ceremonial law. The civic law dealt with government policy. So
I'm sorry. Let me cut in for 1 second here. I want to recommend a book to Mike. There's a book called Living Biblically, and the author actually tried to follow all the laws, Old Testament included, for I think it was a year that he did this. And it's actually kind of a fun book at times, because when he'd see like gay people, what have you, he'd throw little pebbles at them. So he was still technically in compliance with the Old Testament.
Okay. Well, no, I mean, go ahead. Actually, I actually asked that not to be completely. Oh, thanks, Ethan, too. By the way, I got it looked up, but I actually asked that out of curiosity. And you were saying there's a separation between civic and ceremonial.
Civic, ceremonial, and natural laws. So the civic.
Wait. You have to include temple law in there.
The temple law is a subsection of the ceremonial law.
Okay, there you go. But it has to be mentioned because the temple law is no longer in effect because the temple's gone. But yeah,
that is true. So the ceremonial law writ large is also gone for that main reason. So the civic law is just what pertained to being a citizen of the nation of Israel. So, for example, you had to build a fence on your roof, and that's because, well, if you lived in ancient Israel, the roof is where you did a lot of stuff because it was so hot to actually be in your house. This is where people actually sat together, chatted, and of course it helps to have a fence on your flat roof because it prevents people from falling over.
Yeah, and you don't want your fiddler to fall off your roof.
Exactly. Right. It's the equivalent of putting, some kind of a safety barrier in front of your pool if you have an infant. Now, this doesn't apply to us anymore because we're not citizens of ancient Israel. It would have applied to foreigners living there.
But I take all those laws there, whether they be temple laws, whether they be ceremonial, whether they be civic. How many of those were passed down specifically by God, and how many were just simply part of the culture at the time?
They, if you were to ask an ancient Jew, they all were, or even a modern Jew. Well, most Orthodox Jews. But in any case, just to finish up, the ceremonial law concerned more religious ritual, so things about how you behaved in the temple and what kind of sacrifices you made, staying kosher, so lobster, not working on the Sabbath. Those would be considered ceremonial laws. So this is why we don't stone people at Red Lobster. And also
why we don't stone people for picking up sticks on Sundays as well.
That as well. Also, actually, even the stoning of homosexuals is considered a part of the civic law for the fact that execution or bring people onto judgment was a part of adjudicating what punishment was worthy of what crime. Now, finally, there's the natural law. These are laws like thou shalt not kill, or thou shalt, or laws which not only the Jews themselves recognize, but they recognize that even surrounding Gentile nations had to recognize for their sake as well.
They came from things like the Code of Hammurabi, so I mean, you can't simply hang this simply on them. I mean, these are laws that preceded, so that needs to be mentioned.
Yeah, they have some precedents there, but not completely. The Jewish code is actually
like not stealing and not murdering. Yeah, those have precedent
wait. Let me finish my point. Jeez, man. So, for example, in the Code of in the Jewish code, it's an eye for an eye. You're supposed to get some kind of evenness out of the whole thing. In the Code of Hammurabi, you could actually be put to death for stealing or have your hand cut off. These were far.
I'm not talking about the punishment. I was talking about the prohibition.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that it has precedence, i.e., the prohibitions, but at the same time, there was a difference in the execution of the punishments.
Oh, yeah,
that they're not identical towards one another. In any case, homosexuality was considered to be part of the natural law, so here's why it was considered to be a part of the natural law, because you actually
got a problem though with that though. If you're going to say that this was natural law and these natural laws were handed down by God, yet we now know that whether somebody's straight or gay or what have you has a biological basis, then what? Where does that leave you with this idea of God handing these down? Because wouldn't he know?
Oh, quite simple. Because to be naturality does not refer to something along the lines of, oh, this happens in nature outside of civilization, like how we in the modern time think of it. If you were a farmer, you knew that animals of the same sex fucked each other, and that had some biological bias. No one doubted that, but also animals did other
basis, things. You mean? Yeah. Continue.
Right. I don't think anyone who worked in farming would have denied that. Although what they would have said was something along the lines of, yeah, animals do this stuff, but there's a lot of things animals do that we would never accept in a civilized society. They also
Hang on though.
Wait.
So somebody that's gay, of course, would have been not allowed amongst the congregation, correct?
someone who is a sodomite would not have. Just because you're a gay doesn't mean you're a sodomite.
Well, okay. Yet at the same point, under these same laws initially, eunuchs weren't allowed either. However, it was Jesus in a conversation with a eunuch that he basically said that he should be allowed among the congregation.
Oh.
So where does that leave you?
Wait, say that again?
When speaking with a eunuch,
right.
Jesus actually ensured his place amongst the congregation.
Yeah, because he never committed the sin of sodomy.
It's not about the sin of sodomy, it's that otherness. It's that natural law you're talking about. Somebody that's a eunuch. As you may remember, in the Old Testament, somebody that had their genitals crushed, for example, their nuts crushed, would also not be allowed amongst the congregation. But this person that had this sexual otherness was invited amongst the congregation, and even based on Jesus' words, given so much preferential treatment.
It was okay, so it wasn't a matter of sexual otherness. Being a eunuch and not being allowed to sacrifice at the temple with women, it was something more along the lines of being on their period, which is actually far more natural. That was more about the ceremony.
Hang on, sorry.
Wait,
I referenced the nuts being crushed.
Yeah, what I'm saying is
a woman on their period. That's a slightly different case.
That is a slightly different case, but I'm bringing this both up just to put something forward, which is that was a matter of not the natural law, but rather the ceremonial law. It was about purity, and bodily purity. It wasn't about
having somebody kick you in the nuts to the point that your nuts are crushed. What does that have to do with purity?
Oh, because it was a deformity of the body.
Okay. That's not actually a deformity. That's an injury, but still.
We've kind of deviated pretty far from like the original.
Yeah. Fuck you and your deviation.
Well, real quick, I just want to mention one thing too. That like, in terms of like you were categorizing, you know, like you said, the Levitical law, the natural law, the ceremonial law, subsets, etc. Well, in Matthew 5:18, which law is Jesus referring to? Then is he referring to all of them?
Do not think that I have come to eliminate the law,
but fulfill them. Yeah.
Right. That is. Oh, okay. Yeah. So the way the Catholic Church understands that specific law is that the purpose of the law is being fulfilled through Christ. It's not being abolished by Christ. It's supposed to be the way Paul kind of describes the law, although he wasn't really there, but it was something that Christ is saying this is going to come to pass when he's with the coming of the church. Was look, the law is supposed to be a stringent schoolmaster. It's supposed to show you that by your own work you're not really going to get into heaven, and it was supposed to be burdensome for a reason. But when you have a covenant of grace, it's no longer about the law. No one is saved through the law, but rather it is more about Christ having mercy, where he relieves you of that and rather offers you great salvation and grace through believing in him and through being baptized in him.
Well, real quick, I'm not talking about applying this to people that are gay, which is
well. Wait a minute. I'm not talking about Paul. I'm talking about Matthew 5:18 specifically.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
You were talking about Paul. Paul didn't write Matthew. Matthew is anonymous.
No, it's not. It was actually written by the Apostle Matthew. And look, I'm not finished. I was going to.
That's still not Paul, though.
I'm still going to justify why. Okay. This is considered to be prophecy. It's supposed to be what will come. It's not supposed to be revealed right then and there.
I'm sorry, but it's well known by all biblical scholars. I don't know anyone that agrees.
Regardless,
will claim that the apostles actually wrote the. We don't have actual signatures. We don't know who wrote the Gospels. We know this, dude.
We're going off on a tangent.
You don't need.
What I'm saying is, regardless who wrote Matthew, Paul didn't write it. So I'm talking about Matthew. What law is Jesus talking about in Matthew 5:18? Ceremonial, natural, which one?
He's talking about the full. Oh, the full law is what he's talking about.
So why aren't we stoning people at Red Lobster?
To read the whole thing, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven, but whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter heaven.
Okay, so now we need to define what jot and tittle means.
Well, no. It's crossing T's and dotting I's, essentially, is what we're talking about at that point. But the standard view of this, if I'm to understand correctly, and I'm sure that good old Epi's going to argue with me, is that Jesus fulfilled the ceremonial law, and that's what that was referencing. I think that's the standard theology on that.
Well, I don't know. My point for bringing 5:18 is he says not a jot and tittle of the law. So I'm like thinking, which law? If he's only talking about natural law, then you have a case. But if he's talking about all laws, as you once said, I go back to my Red Lobster reference. That's all.
No, that's fair enough.
And that's why most theologians would say that he's fulfilling the old ceremonial laws, the temple laws specifically, and whatnot, having to do a sacrifice in the sacrificial law.
Well, and did they do that because they think homosexuality is icky? I mean, that's not fair.
Well, here's the thing is, I really think that in terms of the brief period in which it's referenced by Paul, I think a lot of that comes from the fact that he'd been part of the Sanhedrin. He was one of these Jewish scholars, and I think that's just him bringing forward and perpetuating what was from what was that Levitical law, Deuteronomy that was actually in. Hang on, Headless, I'll let you in a second. I think that it's more a matter of he was just going based on that and those old cultural biases. But I think a fair argument can be made, and not simply based upon what was said to the eunuch that directly contradicts the potentially some of the teachings pertaining to homosexuality and what have you, but whether it be somebody who's had their privy crushed or a woman on their period or this and that, all these people that weren't allowed amongst the congregation were people that couldn't reproduce, which is why such a big deal was made about the eunuch, because once again, you're dealing with somebody that could not reproduce. Because sex acts involving sodomy does not lead to babies being created. Sex with a woman on their period, which is also prohibited, is something that cannot lead to reproduction. Now, these are violations on a lot of levels of what was technically one of the first commands that God gave to mankind, according to the Bible, which is to be fruitful and multiply. And thus it would be an up issue for God because these are things that would not lead to that. According to a lot of ancient Judaic tradition, you weren't technically supposed to even have sex unless you were trying to have children, regardless of the nature of the sex. Wasn't supposed to be for enjoyment, it was supposed to be for reproduction only. To be fruitful and multiply, to grow the tribe.
Well, and under that basis, then we need to stone sterile men and infertile women. I mean,
no. But that's the thing is that would have been the viewpoint pertaining to the eunuch, because if you're going to talk about the deformity, that would have been the deformity in that case. He wouldn't have been allowed amongst the congregation, but Jesus changed that.
Just to add something to that. It doesn't apply to sterile men and women because it's the act to which we're discussing, not necessarily the general cases.
Well,
and what I mean by that is, in principle,
been actually having sex either because they couldn't have offspring. In accordance with Jewish custom, you weren't supposed to have sex if it wasn't to try to bear children.
Exactly.
So if they'd known someone was sterile, that person shouldn't have been ever able to have sex whether they were married or not. And they probably wouldn't have been allowed amongst the congregation based upon the laws that they had at the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, and many married couples who are perfectly fertile and everything, they practice unnatural sex all the time in terms of that. And we don't talk about that at all. So in terms of, you know what I mean? It's calming down to the fact that it's just like, I just think it's icky. Therefore, X. I mean, I'll just say this one more thing too. Where in the DSM-5 is homosexuality a diagnosis for disease? It's not. We just don't. We don't do
that. Was the
although
DSM?
it was at one time.
Hang on, I believe.
Well, it's not anymore.
Wait,
My
wait.
point.
I
We
was
don't
about
do
to say.
that.
I believe
It
that
could be
was
again.
a DSM-2
For all
and
we
was
know.
phased out into 3 or 3R.
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that I believe that diagnosis pertaining to homosexuality being a mental illness, I think that was
3R
phased out
was the
back
last
in
one.
the DSM-2 or 3, I think, is when it was phased out.
Yeah, like in the 70s, I think.
Right. Yeah, just to go back to Matthew, the reason I was invoking Paul wasn't to say that this is what Paul's saying, but rather you just use one part of Scripture to elaborate on what another part of Scripture says. The whole thing is supposed to coalesce into one giant work. It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be all these individual works that are completely isolated from one another. Like Matthew was constructed specifically for the early Christian community, and of course, I think what Jesus is saying in the sermon is gathered and written there to reflect on the general theology that's going on there. So it's not completely out of the question to quote what Paul is saying in order to better understand what's being said in the sermon. You interpret the clearer verse, the unclear verse with the clearer verse. From what I understand it, Christ is speaking about the law not being abolished, but fulfilled because its purpose was done when Christ provided grace as a method of salvation. So the Red Lobster argument does not hold that.
Incidentally, just pro tip: if you go to the Koine Greek, one potential read of that is "I didn't come to abolish the law, to bring it forward in time." That's one potential read of the Koine Greek.
Well, like I said, the Red Lobster thing is almost a little bit facetious, is my point about bringing that up. But that's my question, though, when it says the law. I was just curious as to what specific law, and I think you kind of cleared it up.
Right.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
No worries.
The bring it forward in time makes a little bit more sense to me in terms of that particular read of it. And I think it's a shame that it's something that hasn't really been propagated so much. I found that out myself when I was trying to learn the Greek. And when I found that out, I'm like, oh, well, that would make much more sense if they actually adopted that the law is supposed to change as we move forward in time. But unfortunately, that's kind of the minority view.
Well, there's even a point in Luke, I think, where he's talking about the disciples arguing amongst themselves over who is the most righteous or who is the most holy. And I think the Koine Greek for argument is simply deliberate, because later on in that same verse, and I wish I remembered which one it was, I could actually go get it, but it also said Jesus knew their thoughts, or argument, and the same word for knowing their thoughts was that they used in that was arguing. Yeah. So Jesus deliberated their thoughts just as they were deliberating amongst themselves. It's interesting. I just think.
Yeah. Oh, Koine Greek is a fascinating language.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. And I honestly, I spent, good grief, about 6 months or so prior to the first of the strokes that I had trying to learn it. And I couldn't even get it before the damn strokes. I mean, it's a hard language. It really is. I just didn't have the aptitude for it. Not for lack of trying, but I had to give up because the way that they conjugate the different words and what have you is just, it's a lot to try to get down. And without learning it properly, forget it.
I know a lot of people who took part-time courses just to try and, like, part-time, like they would have a full-time job and they'd go to night school. And they were like, there's no way I can do this on my own, because you have to spend so much time reading and gathering perspective and gathering origin. It's like entomology PhD, just taking... Not entomology, that's bugs. Etymology 101 times 10. It's like getting your PhD in that and also learning a different language at the same time.
Yeah, and the weird thing about Koine Greek is that we're used to things like, languages that as they're trying to figure out words, a lot of the words came in the written form first. But in Koine Greek, it was a spoken language that was later converted to a text language. And that that boggles the mind.
Hey, can I, as long as we're talking about theology, could I float a theory I've had? I actually came to recently. So in my latest discussion with a Protestant friend, she has some criticisms of the perpetual virginity of Mary, and basically they boil down to 2 points, which is it's kind of they see it as a Catholic innovation that took place in the early 4th century, and what it really does is it robs Mary of her womanhood, and it makes her more of an idol. And thinking about it, I've come
fair argument.
Fair argument, but here's the thing that I find very interesting. It's actually a restatement of the modern disposition towards just seeing the notion of a virgin birth in general. Because what does a modern liberal, someone who's more moderately liberal theologically, say about it, about just the regular virgin birth? They'll say the virgin birth is a later church invention, of course, because it doesn't appear in Mark, it appears in Matthew and Luke, so they consider it to be a later addition, not early in the life of Christ. And then they'll go on.
I don't know, man. I think you're on a slippery slope. You're almost like giving credit to Mark here.
Yeah. And it makes Mary into less of a woman and more into an unobtainable ideal, someone who's a mother and yet sexually pure. So it kind of lends credence to my perspective that modernity is just, and modern secularism is just Protestantism, just taking its original mentality and going one step further.
Well, I kind of agree with you a little bit there in terms of the perspective, because when you speak of Protestants' take on it, like how, I hesitate to use the word because I don't want them to show up, but like how G-Men talks about how Catholics worship Mary as an idol and everything, and put that aside. But you're right, the Protestants view kind of as a woman's place is to be completely, it's like a mix, because abstract and scientifically speaking, virgin birth is impossible. But
no, it's not.
Well, a virgin birth is impossible on the supposition that she births a male, because she herself lacks any Y chromosome.
Okay, yeah. I remember talking about the Y chromosome. It's just like, so Jesus is technically a girl. No. I remember having to tell somebody.
There is actually a case in which a woman can essentially impregnate herself for all intents and purposes without ever having sex. The offspring is always going to be female, and the syndrome is called Turner syndrome.
Well, virtually. What I'm saying is immaculate conception is extremely rare. Okay, let's just put it that way.
I'm not arguing with you on that basis. I'm just, you said scientifically, so I'm like, well, technically,
You're right. Actually, to correct it. But yeah, in all intents and purposes, it's extremely, extremely rare for that matter. But with the introduction of what you stated about Protestants' view on it, actually, could you elaborate a little bit more on that, how they inject that and change it?
Right. So the early Reformation kind of saw the perpetual virgin birth as being not really biblical. It's not clearly stated in the Bible, which is fair enough. It's something you have to make a couple of inferences on. I think it's arguable, but it's not clearly there, and they therefore regard it as just like a 3rd, 4th century innovation that didn't actually take place within Scripture. It was defended by a lot of the early church fathers, St. Jerome, for example. But anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. And they say, okay, this is really the basis for Catholics just putting Mary in such high esteem. They say she's a perpetual virgin, that she didn't have any earthly needs, that she didn't have a husband, that himself wanted to have sex, and they couldn't have enjoyed, a regular, normal relationship. Well, screw all that stuff. There's no support for that. And it makes Mary into something of an idol. And, of course, they'll cite the fact that we pray the rosary, that we have Does
it make her an idol or an archetype?
No difference for them.
Well, in a way it does, because, there's one which would speak to things like idolatry, which is the charge G-men make, and the other one which is basically setting them up as being the ideal woman, or just the archetype of purity. In terms of women,
I mean, I'd say she's more of an archetype. Granted, a concrete one, but yeah, they'd say it's idolatrous, and I actually understand that. Looking into Protestantism more, because in the Protestant Church there is no additional sacrifice. Jesus did it once on the cross and it's done, and unless you're an Anglican or a Lutheran or specific sects of Protestant, they think it's just at best a memorial. It's just done as a gesture or a symbol of Jesus. So
well, and I think I'm sorry.
Just to finish up, so they mostly see prayer as their only form of worship, but to Catholics and Orthodox and a few others, sacrifice is actually the form of worship. And what do you offer but a representation of Christ's sacrifice at Calvary through the Mass?
As you may have noticed, Max tends to be very verbose.
So of course they're going to see. So of course they're going to see us as idol worshippers, because we do with Mary what they do with God, and what they can only do with God.
Well, and I disagree with the view that it's an idolatry, because if you listen to, and I'll just speak in terms of the Hail Mary, blessed art thou among women, meaning she's exceptional, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. They're talking about, her representation and protection of Jesus and giving birth to. That's the way I look at it. I'm like saying, no, we don't, blessed are you doesn't mean hallowed be you,
Yeah, I mean, we're just quoting Luke chapter 1.
Right.
Well, also the main reason why they try to claim it's idolatry is more the whole praying for the intercessory prayer pertaining to Mary in specific. Yet at the same point, all the saints actually fill that kind of role, each for their own purpose. And intercessory prayer, in terms of that kind of level of it, is something that I think is grossly misunderstood by most Protestants.
Well, and then there's the no true Scotsman virtue of it, and I hate to say G-Man, but he's out there and he always brings up the poorest representations of it all. If you claim that all Catholics aren't Christian, the no true Scotsman thing, then you really discredit, and you basically disconnect the entire origin of the Protestant church, and
you immediately become the third or fourth largest religion.
Yeah, you basically cut your religion in half, because when it comes to Christianity measured as a whole, that's Catholics and Protestants all together around the world. So
likely more than 50% Catholic at that.
Yeah. So.
Right. Yeah. It's. I've kind of come to a conclusion where I think that modern secularism seems to be just Protestantism, just brought back, just pushed one step further.
I've tried to explain to some people that are, that are of the more evangelical nature, these whole Catholics say, and they pray to saints and they yada yada yada, and that's and their lack of understanding to that. And they don't seem to understand that kind of the Catholic view of that, as far as I was to understand, is that you don't feel worthy enough, you don't feel clean enough. It's like the old temple laws that you're supposed to cleanse yourself before going in there. You're supposed to purify yourself. So it almost goes back to that in terms of, instead of going directly to Jesus, you go to basically somebody to advocate for you to Jesus / God, whatever, because you don't feel worthy, because, well, you're not pure. You're not clean.
Well, going back to what Max said about secularism being an evolution of, or not an evolution, like a new view of, what did you say, like a new section of Protestantism?
I kind of likened it to and the next stage of Protestantism. It seems to be like a gradual shift. Although I guess someone could argue Protestantism is the next shift from Catholicism.
I could argue that the evangelic movement is actually the next step of Protestantism as well.
Oh yeah. Definitely both. I mean,
but it's even hard to define what evangelical is, because like the evangelicals are even split on. It just depends on issues in many cases there. But I haven't talked to you since before, and it's kind of actually sad to even bring it up, because Jade brought up. Sorry.
Go ahead.
She brought up something, in fact, in a conversation with, I think it was Hilarious Zulu and everything, and he's young and everything, but he was talking about how I will destroy your humanism, not realizing that humanism is not just simply secular. Like, there is the Imago Dei, which brings up, Christian humanism, etc. So in terms of, in speaking, my point is, partly I wanted to bring up Jade because it just hit me about her bringing that up. And anyway, I kind of miss her. But what she said in terms of that was that being secular does not completely separate you from humanism, and therefore, and because humanism itself got its roots in based on the Imago Dei, there's almost that connection there. So I don't know if I'm going off on a tangent, but I'm wondering if there's some kind of connection with, as you said, the next turn in terms of Protestantism and secularism.
Oh, hang on a second. I've got to interrupt for 1 second based on something that was asked in the chat. So James, the brother of Jesus, is also brought forth immaculately. There's a argument about that as whether James was actually the literal brother or whether they're talking about spiritual brother.
I would say that James is a brother of Jesus. However, I would say that he is Jesus's half brother. That is to say, Joseph had a prior marriage, and of course, James came forward from that marriage. And since his first wife died, he remarried. And Jesus came forth from that.
I don't see that there's any real basis for that, but I do know in scholarship there is a debate as to whether they're saying he's the actual brother or brother as you'd call any Christian a brother.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't, I mean, that's a very minority viewpoint, but so there are 3 ways of understanding that. One is actual brother, but 2 other ways. St. Jerome actually propounded that because in Aramaic there is no term for cousin, unlike Greek, they were probably they probably translated brother as in, they probably were referring to him as a cousin in the Aramaic, and then it came out as brother in the Greek. So that's how the church in the West has understood it. But in the East, we understand it to be his half-brother. That's also a possibility as well. Although, in terms of supporting my contention, I'll cite 2 things. There is a book called the Proto-Evangelium of James. And in that book, it actually said that Mary was a Vestal Virgin, that her parents, Joachim and Anna, consecrated her to the temple where she would live out her life as a nun, or the equivalent of it. And in doing so, they assigned Joseph to be her guardian. And some people will say, well, isn't this heretical or apocryphal? And yes, it is apocryphal, and yes, it is to a certain extent heretical. I wouldn't get every doctrine out of it. But these early books that were non-canonical still had some kind of historical basis in the early Christian tradition. The Gospel of Thomas is also heretical, and yet it actually captures a real tradition where Thomas...
I want to cut in a second and throw the ball back to Mike here, because I didn't mean this to lead to a full tangent. I was just trying to answer a question fairly quick there.
I was listening. Actually, I thought about.
Never mind that.
No, you're fine. No, I thought about actually. It's interesting because I thought about the Gospel of Thomas earlier, and obviously the verse like lift a stone and all that from Stigmata. But anyway, I do think there are some important statements on that. And on that note, what you were saying, it's heretical. However, continue. Go ahead.
However, it does have some kind of historical basis in Thomas's trip to India. For example, it actually lists a leader in India who was there, who ruled as king, who ended up killing Thomas for converting his wife and son. And in India, they actually found an archaeological discovery fairly recently that had the king's name on a coin in that specific era. And they... So
hence coined in Greek. No, just kidding.
No, but right. But they were able to find some archaeological... They were able to find some archaeological evidence that corresponded to some truth found within that gospel. And on the other hand, there was also an artifact that was taken, which was apparently the bone of St. Thomas, that was dated to like the early 2nd century.
A bone attributed to St. Thomas, you mean?
Yeah. Yes. It was. They found it in Jerusalem, but it was buried from India, and of course they found the Portuguese actually found a whole Christian community that they were unaware of themselves in India, and everyone in India said, "Yeah, we were started here by St. Thomas." So there was a kind of a corresponding oral tradition. There was archaeological evidence, and these.
Is that the town where they have allegedly the burial place of Jesus or something like that, where they have
No.
the two, or where they have the two burials, one on top of the other, each buried in different directions based on the tradition?
I don't believe so. No.
There's a lot of places that claim a lot of like. There's that.
I know.
Place. Well, no, there's that. I was just thinking that place in Pakistan that claims they have the Ark of the Covenant.
No, this starts with a K. I can't think of the name of the damn area.
Right. But in terms of evidence to support what the Proto-Evangelium of James is saying, Mary, when she gets a visit from the angel, what happens? The angel says, "You will be with son, or you will be with child, and he will be called the Son of the Most High." Yada yada. And she says, "How can this be? I have not been with a man." Now, this is kind of odd if she's just engaged and she's going to marry somebody. I mean, she's not an idiot. She probably knows how sex works. And
Does
yet
the
at the
text
same
actually say that she was engaged at that point, or might the engagement have been a result of her getting pregnant?
Oh no, it was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it states as much. She was
Okay.
engaged.
I wasn't sure on that one.
Right. So unless she wasn't going into a life where she was going to have sex or was expecting it, it would make sense that she would ask that question. But it's kind of nonsensical to ask that question when you're in a situation where you're about to get married. Of course you're going to have a kid. That's expected of you when you're a Jewish girl.
Incidentally, the idea that Jesus wouldn't have had any siblings, the reason why that's pretty much rejected by scholars is just simply the notion that, okay, you have a Jewish girl, she got married, she's going to have kids. There's no reason why she wouldn't have, which is why the idea that Jesus was the only child that was the offspring of Mary is the minority. Because it just doesn't make sense for the times or the culture.
It wouldn't make sense, but given that specific verse in Matthew, and if you're going to take what it says at face value, which Protestants are committed to, at least the majority of them are, then you're kind of committed to the fact that when she asks that question, she was not expecting to have kids. She was not expecting to.
That might be a reach.
I don't think it is. Like if somebody was to say, if your dad was talking to you on, let's say, a couple of days before your wedding, and he says, "You're going to be a great father," and you say, "How am I going to be a dad? I've never had sex before." Like he's saying,
the assumption is you're getting married, you'll eventually have them. Is kind of usually the assumption, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's the assumption, and what I'm saying is in Luke, when Mary says, "How will this be?" Sorry, when the angel says, "You will be with child, and he'll be called Son of the Most High," she says, "How can this be? I have not known a man." The angel is speaking in the future tense here. She knows he's speaking in the future tense.
But she's speaking in the past tense.
Yeah, exactly.
She's not speaking future tense, so she's not speaking in such a way that would lead you to...
She's speaking present tense active.
Yeah, even so.
Even so, the angel is not referring to the present. Even so, the angel is not referring to the present or currently.
Well, what I'm saying is there's no reason to think that she wouldn't expect to have children later in life.
Or ever, especially if she's just about to get married.
Well, the one question I have, and this is kind of just offshoot, but Joseph knew that he was, I think, was it Gabriel visited him, but so Joseph knows it's not his. But how does he think he feels? Everybody patting him on the back, saying, "Hey, way to go!" Yeah, that's not,
Well, some of these he's going to have to cover for her anyway, otherwise she'll be stoned based upon
exactly.
their tradition.
So yeah, so he did her a solid by hanging with, But anyway,
that's another thing. If you go by the story that Joseph was a widower and he was just expected to be a guardian, then he's of someone who was going to be a Vestal Virgin, then Joseph wasn't in this to have sex from the get-go anyway. So that also kind of makes sense of that. Like, it's not about some guy who's like, wait, she has to be a perpetual virgin forever? Why? Like,
once again, minority view.
Yeah, I know.
I was bringing that up as an anecdote almost, but the other thing too is he should have mailed in the census form. He wouldn't have had. They would have had a better place to stay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it is a reach. I think that that particular verse kind of bears it out. She says, he says, "You will be with kid." She says, "How can this be? I've not known a man." Like, she knows that the angel is speaking in the future tense. She knows that.
But if she was already engaged, she'd have the expectation of having children.
Yeah, she'd have exactly.
That's why I asked you to clarify that.
Yeah, she would exactly. That's what I'm saying. She'd have the expectation to have the kid. If you would think that she isn't prepared for a life of perpetual virginity, but she does, and I think that this is evidence to show that this early Christian tradition holds up, given what the scripture is indicating.
So what started the conversation?
I have no fucking clue.
I said Protestants and evangelical Protestants and liberal modern and modernist theologians, or just people in general who consider the story to be sexist, seem to have the same talking points about it, except liberals apply it to the virgin birth, and evangelicals and other Protestants apply it to the perpetual virginity.
Yeah, I don't know if I think it's kind of reaching and almost going out of your way to call it sexist, because there's plenty of other bad things that happen to women.
I thought that one of the ideas from one of the early church fathers was that the reason why Mary was a perpetual virgin is basically upon the point that she went to heaven, she was basically got her virginity back, or something along those lines, according to one of the earlier church fathers. Something along those lines, wasn't it?
I have never heard of that.
Oh, I heard something along those lines, that this was just a tradition that essentially, because she had given birth to Jesus, that she got to be the perpetual virgin for that. It was basically her reward. Which, to me, doesn't necessarily make sense, but I thought that was pitched by one of the early church fathers.
I have never heard of it, so...
Most likely not then, because you've studied most of them.
That's almost getting into Kolob, though, like where God actually impregnated Mary sexually. Yeah. It's like so weird. I don't know.
Oh, by the way, I also got into a discussion with a couple of people, with 3 people on the American Constitution. One of them was Trey Jadlow.
Oh man,
this is what I said to him in this conversation. Let's see. I would rather King George stayed in power. The Constitution, while I recognize it as the law of the U.S., is an imperfect document that supports unjust laws like eminent domain. Not to mention, during its inception, was a pro-slavery document. And later I said, Trey, don't go all boomer and start lavishing praise on the Constitution. He did not respond.
He thinks
Max will bludgeon you later.
Eminent domain is a really awful thing, but he thinks it's like the worst kind of oppression.
I never said it was. I said it was unjust.
Wait, was that you? But that wasn't you. That was him. So that wasn't him. That was you.
That was me. I said eminent domain was unjust.
Isn't Trey the guy? Correct me if is he the guy who makes teeth or something like that? Or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Hold on. Well, actually, no. I'm a little more irritated. Wait. So you think you would have rather lived under King George rather than
fucking A.
Trey Jadlow, the reason why I need to apologize to the internet.
Wait, hold on. I'm surprised. We don't. Come on. Really? You don't think the American Revolution was worth it? Really?
Two reasons. One, slavery would have ended a lot quicker if it didn't happen. Second reason, the British actually did a good job of keeping the colonists from expanding westward and colonizing more land and genociding more natives. So yeah, ultimately I think that those 2 things alone made it worth make me side with the British more. Plus I don't
I don't know. The thing is, the whole concept of the American Revolution was, though, that it was essentially...
Okay, we're not arguing politics on this shit. Come on, guys.
I'm trying to make my point, though. And I think, ultimately, that the monarchy had to die out at some point. yeah, there were problems with the early American colonists, but I think in the larger picture, it was still a necessary evil, for the end of a bigger evil, which was the end of the British Empire.
I should not.
Okay.
All right. I'm not going to expand on that.
The thing is that right now, it's the Canadian, we're still underneath the rule of the monarchy versus the American view, which is fuck kings and queens, even though right now we have somebody in charge that, is being treated as if they are a goddamn king by some segment of the society, which is just obnoxious enough, and I don't want it to go down that road, which is part of why I'm killing it right now. That, and even more so with the exception of speculative fiction in which you're doing alternate histories, I don't see this thought experiment being something that will even really necessarily go that far within the current kind of context, because we don't know what the world would look like in that kind of situation. We don't know whether World War II would have been won, what would have gone on with Japan and all these other things during that same time period. I mean, the long arc of history that the U.S. has been here, you can't really say one way or the other how things would have turned because, well, frankly, butterfly effect, if nothing else. I think that kind of makes the entire conversation a little problematic, and just people throwing their little opinions at a wall, and I find it to be something unresolvable.
Okay, even just giving their opinion, even just giving the justification of the founders on face value, I don't think they actually provided good justification for rebelling in the first place. I mean, they provided things like no taxation without representation, but I'm not sure why taxation ipso facto requires representation.
That wasn't the only thing, though. Like, about the Intolerable Acts, right? Like the main, one of the biggest reasons for the revolution was the collective punishment policies of the British Empire. One of the things that after the Boston Tea Party, they shut down the Boston port, the whole Boston port. So they were going to punish the whole colony of Boston, really, for the actions of a few well, I guess I would call them, we call them the Patriots now, but yeah.
Hang on though. If the colonies had a problem, just out of curiosity, what was the name of the Duke or Duchess or or Earl or what have you that they could have actually gone to with their grievances?
They actually had, they actually instituted from what I remember, the British actually had local parliaments, and there are even political terms like Governor General or Governor that still stay from the monarchy in modern American law. They actually provided democratic outlets within the country.
They shut a lot of those down after the Boston Tea Party.
Yeah, first of all, even the American founders thought the way that the Boston Tea Party was reacted in light of the taxes was unjustified.
Doesn't matter.
Well, hang on though. The thing is with
the response by the British.
Hang on, though. There's a thing about the Boston Tea Party that unless you grew up in Massachusetts and went out by where they have old Ironside doctrine, this and that you wouldn't necessarily know, because they make it sound like it was this big planned thing. And it was more a bunch of drunken yahoos that were just pissed off about being taxed.
Fine, but I mean, it still wasn't right for the reaction by the British, which is ultimately what really later fomented in the Greater Revolution. I mean, the British probably could have avoided this whole revolution if they hadn't clamped down so hard on the colonies afterward.
But is that, even if I was to agree with you, is that in itself ipso facto worthy of revolution?
A response to severe oppression, when you have to actually get on a boat for how many months to actually go and file a grievance and then wait for the boat to come back?
And there were other things too that they would do. I'm reading up on the Intolerable Acts. There were 4 main acts, although one of them was kind of a myth, the Quartering Act, which really wasn't that repressive. But look at the Administration of Justice Act. What they would do is, if you were convicted, if they felt like you were convicted, if they would convict you of a crime, they would, instead of having your trial in the colonies, they would ship you off all the way to England. And they wouldn't compensate. I mean, they would only compensate you for the boat ride there, but they wouldn't compensate you for any time that you lost working back at home.
Well, one thing you said, the Quartering Act was not significant, or
that was not significant at all. That was largely a myth.
Why'd we pass the Third Amendment then?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it's still it could be an issue. It's really, to be honest, I view the Third Amendment as mostly preemptive. That could be a serious thing, but it really hasn't happened yet.
Even if I was to grant you the whole thing, just for the sake of argument, these were punishments carried out not by the crown but by Parliament. If the revolutionaries did want to, in rebelling against Parliament, what they could have done after the revolution, once they had succeeded, was agree to have representation through a governor general as
but they
part
wanted
of the
to rule themselves. I think that's completely reasonable and rational desire, especially when you have a ruling group that's so far away. It's just not practical.
And there were still
and
many
you have the internet.
And you still could have done and you still could have done that at home through those reforms while keeping the crown. What I'm saying is these seem like grievances not against the crown per se, but rather against the Parliament, which even the early revolutionaries were saying. They said, look, we're not actually rebelling against the king, we're rebelling against the wants in Parliament. We're actually still rather receptive to the king. It wasn't until later you had more radical revolutionaries like Jefferson and Paine where it shifted to towards republicanism in general.
Can I just say one thing? First off, shut the fuck up, monarchist.
Yeah.
Well, I gotta say that. Second, I actually have to go to work right now. Damn it, it's getting good. But
yeah, have a good day and get the fuck out of here. No more politics. Fuck off.
Because I really have a lot to say. But see you guys later.
Always have a lot to say on politics, Verdant.
Well, yeah, but this is serious.
That way. Go to work. Go to work. Go to work. I'll throw your ass out if you don't.
Sucking a bit.
Yeah,
Sorry.
you get him on politics, and holy crap, man.
You know what? I actually have to thank him for getting me involved in the political Twitter sphere. I actually do enjoy myself now. Mostly I've been taking the piss out of Charlie Kirk. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, there's somebody I'm supposed to start covering at some point in the near future, and I'm really fucking dreading it.
Who are you supposed to start covering?
What's his name? James Patterson, I think it is.
Who?
What's his name? James Patterson? Something Patterson?
What's he do?
The fucking Canadian guy that did that that was sitting there being all pissed
Jordan
off.
Peterson.
Jordan Peterson. How can I forget Jordan, for fuck's sake? It's the flat earther's first name. Damn it. Yeah, Jordan Peterson. Yeah, that fucking dipshit. I really don't
Jordan
like
Peterson's a flat earther? I'm sorry if I sound ignorant.
No. Jordan something or other is the big flat earther on here.
Jeranism?
Jeranism, yeah.
Yeah.
I should remember Jordan because of that, but yeah.
What do you think of his? What do you think? Are you going to critique him from the perspective of being a fellow Jungian?
Oh God, I have thought about it. I don't want to get into that because I don't like shitting on Jung because I think he had a lot of good ideas, but I think that the way that Jordan parses it out is kind of horseshit. But I'm more concerned with his representations of theology, as well as his representations of, well, frankly, just about everything. He kind of has that cult leader edge going on there, in that he will say, the two things that are nonsense, and then say something completely outlandish and absurd. And because you've already accepted the first two things that seem like somewhat common sense, the third thing then becomes more digestible, and I find that, well, culty.
You know what? Actually, I kind of agree with you. Like, he says some things from time to time which are really smart, but other times it's like, women, if you keep oppressing men, soon we're going to have to rebel, and soon you're going to have to decide to kill us. Like, I'm like, what the fuck are you saying?
Worse yet, his whole idea of dominance annoys the piss out of me. And not just because he used really bad analogies, but just his idea of how dominance and submission works is just flat out wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I disagree with him on the whole free speech slant of things, but like
I think the free speech is more of a smokescreen than anything else, though.
Here's the thing, though. I'll say this much: he makes it really hard to be an ally. Like like in the beginning, I was like, I want to like you, but now it's like, I don't know how I can rationally defend you.
Well, a lot of the problem with him trying to wrap this up in the flag of free speech is, God, I hate this term. No, I'm not gonna say it. I'm not gonna fucking say it. I hate that virtue signaling shit. Ah, yeah. Oops, I said it. But yeah, that's how it kind of comes across. You know, this is about free speech. No, it's fucking not.
You could have covered it with like a sneeze. You could have been like,
Yeah, I'm not that with it at the moment. As I said at the start of this, I was initially thinking about inviting G-Man just because my cognitive ability right now is at such a low fucking level that he might be able to actually make a point in a debate.
Dragnet brought up the fact that G-Man banned the possessive, or I think the possessive your.
Not only no, it's you. He banned the conjugation of you are, as well as they are, and basically if it has a fucking apostrophe, it's banned.
Apostrophe and oh my gosh.
I mean, I don't think he's done can't yet, but once he gets corrected on that, I'm sure he'll add it to the list.
So he's just going full on phonics?
Oh, he's also, and this is the thing that kind of got me a little irritated earlier, is that Shadow Heathen is still banned on his channel, but he will mention the Shadow Heathen channel. So he'll mention my fucking channel, but Shadow's banned from actually talking in his chat, even though he'll mention? Fuck off.
Yeah, that seems douchey. No,
so
it doesn't.
I switched to the old classic 13 Heathens account to ask him about it, and he's like, oh, it's because you're irritating. I'm like, well, I can't argue with you on that. I certainly do get irritating at times. But at the same point, if you're going to fucking ban me from saying anything, just don't fucking say anything about me.
One thing that drives me nuts is that it's not Preaching to the Choir Ministries, it's Preaching to the Choir Ministries. If you ever watch his videos, he always says, hello everyone and welcome to another edition of Preaching to the Choir Ministries. He always says of
That's because he doesn't think before he speaks, so he stammers. That's
well,
but yeah.
So in other words, it's a stammering thing, like it's just basically gone into his lexicon of introducing the name.
Well, let me think. Before I say something, what should I? Yeah, it's that. I think.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's it.
I'm not
it's just an thing.
Yeah. I kind of stopped paying attention to him after his I'm going to capitalize on Jade video.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe that. I mean, I was we were in here. I think we were all in here. We were talking about how she played, I think the cello or something, because I play violin, and we were talking about that. I don't know. It's just like she's here. But somebody said on the GoFundMe page that she was found with her earphones in the computer.
The official story is she was found laying on her bed with a laptop on her lap and her earphone in, listening to a video.
I really hope the last thing she was seeing.
Hang on, I'm going to disable the external sound for one moment, guys. Just give me one. Anyway, hang on. Sorry about that. I'm turning back on the audio. There are some things that I'm not going to state publicly, so I turned that off for just a moment there. But yeah, your joke, Max, was a good one, so repeat it.
Oh, yeah. I like Jade died doing what we all loved, being exposed to stupidity on the internet.
There we go. And incidentally, nobody knows what video was being watched at the time, so. But
well, somebody said something very important, that all the collective knowledge of the collection of knowledge of everything, or collective IQ, that's what they said, it's dropped significantly because she knew a lot about a lot.
She really did. Of course, yeah, she's missed. There is incidentally a fundraiser that's going on that's pertaining to per burial fund, etc. I probably going to add the link for that later. I don't actually ever have the chat open when I'm running these, so I can't exactly type stuff in there.
No, it's fine. Actually, yeah, I can't. I think actually, if you just type in Jade West GoFundMe, it'll come right up on Google, I think.
Really cool.
But I think I can't remember the other name. Binder, Jade Binder. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm not doxing her, but that's what.
Yeah, actually Becky Binder, but yeah.
Okay.
Was the other ID that she went by, but regardless. Incidentally, since G-Man has come up a couple times, and everybody knows what his actual name is, I just for fun decided just for giggles to go and look up, because regardless of the area, there's actual databases that you can go online and look up for free. The very different court cases in that area, whether it be criminal or what have you. And if you look up for criminal court cases in his area, you'll quickly find that the name Gary Moore is actually incredibly common in his part of New Jersey.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's actually, I think, about since 2010, I think it was, there's been, I think, 10 to 12 arrests for drug possession, in some cases with with distribution being in there, distributing drugs, all kinds of different drug arrests in there, and there's even one for spousal abuse listed in there.
Is there one for safe theft?
No, there's not one for safe theft. That's actually what I was looking for. But yeah, there are a whole bunch of ones for drug offenses.
I just figured out that's full.
As one spousal abuse for a Gary Moore. Now, who these different Gary Moores are, who knows, as well as a shit ton of like traffic violations and whatnot. But apparently it's a very common name where he lives, so I don't know why he cares about the name being mentioned.
Yeah, I just realized that's Voltaire with a Kangol.
Oh, with a what? Sorry?
Or, Kangol hats, like
Kangol? I've never heard them called that. That's interesting.
Well, if you were wearing it the other way around, it'd have a kangaroo on it. Samuel L. Jackson used to wear them all the time.
That's a specific brand.
Yeah, I know, but well, excuse me, all the hell. All right.
Fun fact: mine is Scala. That's the brand that I happen to be wearing.
Yeah, I don't know. I always call them Scully caps.
I don't know. The first time I saw the image of Pew he was drinking bleach with the cap on, but it was so perfect because we just got done listening to Mr. ID, and he had just changed it all of a sudden, and I think you said one word, so it popped up on the screen, and you heard 14 people dying laughing at the same time because when you talk, your avatar pops up, and you just.
I think I remember that.
Yeah, no, it's a funerary fund. Yeah, you're right. Thank you for the correction on that one. I stated it wrong. Oh, and hi, Vincent.
But you had one. You had changed it from a shotgun, and it didn't look like a shotgun. It looked kind of like two small pipes, and it was Clorox, and your eyes were like half shut.
Oh. Well, if you probably haven't seen this one then, and you're probably going to like it. It'll take me just a minute to get it up, though.
That's fine.
No pun intended.
Oh, it always takes you a few minutes to get it up from what I've been told.
From what you've been told, come on now.
That was good.
Once you've seen it, you don't forget.
And not for the reason it takes a while for Carson, because Carson needs a crane.
Let's see, where the fuck is it? Where is it gone?
Dude, get out the magnifying glass, it might help.
Where's the rum gone?
But it was funny, I was reminded of Voltaire, and have you guys seen the movie Swingers?
I have not.
There's a scene in that where they're eating breakfast, and he goes, and it says here on the menu, breakfast anytime. She's like, that's right, what would you like? And he goes, I would like pancakes in the Age of Enlightenment. And he's like thinking, yeah, see, a lot of people don't get it. It's like, but like, she like rolls her eyes and walks away, and he goes, like some waitress is gonna know about early French philosophy. And then like 5 seconds later, he goes, excuse me, we're in a hurry. And she goes, hang on, Voltaire. Yeah. Well, the movie itself is good, but the writing, second to none.
Oh, God. I love how much of a troll Voltaire was, IRL.
Yeah.
So good.
Okay, it did not cool down enough in here, so I'm having to actually vent from the air-conditioned server room into the main house. This is fun. Ugh.
Oh, I found it. Again, I should copy and paste it. That way, I can open it and do a thing.
Still up. I thought I unplugged those.
I usually have my shit together for images a little bit better, but I literally just turned on my computer. So,
well, the
this
sculpture had actually. Oh my god! Ah! Make sure you get that B-17.
Hell yeah!
Now, is it? I don't think they got sued, but didn't Eric Hovind get a cease and desist or something?
Yeah, they did.
Gosh.
Hmm.
It's stuff like that that just, it's just like it reveals that I hesitate to say he doesn't actually believe what he thinks.
What gets me is
He's
you
just
have
trying to
people
make
sit
money.
there and going, B-17 is fucking cyanide. And it's like, then you have idiots like G-Man that are like, oh, gee, if somebody can prove that to me, it's like, Google, dude, Google, just fucking Google it.
No, I could actually break out the crayons and draw him the fucking bond line structures and where the bond is cleaved and show him, yes, nitrile group, my guy.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna add, yeah, but chances are he won't listen. I remember once somebody took him step by step, where he showed evidence for transitional animals. He showed a drawing made as a prediction of what kind of fossils are expected to be found within the evolutionary hypothesis, and lo and behold, 50 years later, they actually found that transitional animal. They found the remains to a transitional animal that looked very familiar, and that and that thesis was confirmed. What does G-Man do? He says, "Oh, that's just a picture. That doesn't prove anything."
Yeah, well, it's
like the opposite of flat Earth. It's just a picture. It doesn't prove anything.
And this goes back to the joke I was referencing earlier, that now that I'm at the current cognitive low that I'm at, he might have a chance of actually making a point.
Well, Dragnet,
I have to be massively cognitively impaired for him to even have that chance, because he just doesn't fucking pay attention or listen. He's too busy trying to self-aggrandize and grandstand.
Yeah, I mean, it's what he loves to do. But I remember actually, Dragnet brought up something very interesting about, well, obviously he doesn't understand nuance in any way, shape, or form. He takes any type of correction as a personal attack. So there's a handicap right there in any conversation, intellectual or otherwise. But the thing that really I think is interesting is that he doesn't understand the difference between something preventing something and something helping to prevent something. So in other words, he criticized people by saying, somebody says a diet and exercise doesn't prevent cancer. And we were saying, yeah, it helps prevent it, but it doesn't ultimately prevent it. Lance Armstrong, anyone? So, it's like saying, oh, wearing a seatbelt will prevent death in a car accident. No, it will help prevent it. He doesn't understand that simple nuance. And I honestly think he's not pretending not to know for correction. I just think he doesn't get it.
I think he's just way too fast and loose with his words and what he says. He doesn't put careful thought into it.
Hang on, though. When he talks about getting into a discussion or some kind of debate or what have you, the first thing he talks about is getting his definitions ready.
Yeah. And
basically, this is one of his ways of bogging down conversation so it can't go anywhere, because he's not interested in actually learning anything.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always the center. He's always waiting for his chance to talk.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't care what your position is. He doesn't care what you have to say about things. He's going to make whatever the fuck his assumptions are. And one of the assumptions that I mentioned when I did that hangout earlier, the one that's since been removed, is how it annoys me that he keeps trying to invite himself onto my channel when, frankly, he's not welcome.
Who?
G-Man, he's a hangout vandal. Why would I want him on my fucking channel? Sorry.
Oh, I thought you were referring to some guy named Sven.
Nah.
Sorry, I'm really tired.
No, that's my...
I'm in that same boat, dude.
That's my masseuse. So...
Dude, that's awesome.
He's not here right now. He'll be here. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know if my wife's masseuse was named Sven. I might have to have her go to a different masseuse.
Yeah.
Just saying.
He looks like Fabio, and he has an accent. His hair blows in the wind when there's no fan around.
By the way, By the way, is Fabio around these parts anymore?
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen him in a while, not in any of my hangouts at least. I haven't seen him
He
in any
doesn't-
hangouts lately.
I was speaking of the real Fabio. I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah, but we're talking our Fabio.
I know. I was just...
Our Fabio is still around. He's just mostly games with us now.
I see. I actually want to talk to him more so I can learn Italian. I've been thinking
Our
about
Fabio lives in Tuscany, and every morning the birds wake him up to bring him his breakfast, and he curses at them the entire time.
it. Stop your fucking singing.
I think I remember he was in a debate with I can't remember his name anymore. Dionysus or whatever his name was.
Oh God!
That's fucked
Well,
up.
yeah.
Oh my God!
Oh, well, he scares me. He one time I think he said, "What do you do? Nobody in here probably has a bachelor's degree. What do you do, Fabio?" And he goes, "I work at IT." He goes, "Well, I'm an educator." And Gus immediately chimed in and says, "No, you're not. You left your school in disgrace." just let him have it.
Only Gus can do that.
Oh man, but Fabio's great with the shit talking too.
Yeah, he is.
He's fucking amazing.
Well, didn't he also like work on racing teams and motorcycle, or am I thinking of somebody different?
I don't know offhand, honestly.
Neither do I.
Does he have? Is usually like if he's on cam, isn't he sitting in like a big office with like there's tables and
No,
he
he's
smokes sometimes?
usually sitting at his desk, just chilling.
Yeah, a desk and there's like a door
it's
to
the
the
big office
left.
with the tables. Yeah,
Yeah, okay. We're talking.
he's got some nice ass monitors too.
There's another door that's directly behind and above him, and a little bit to the right.
Above him.
It's okay. Basically, you have the bookcase behind him and all that kind of stuff, and then
Yeah,
a little bit
yeah.
to the right and up on top of that, there's a door.
There is, yeah.
It's a fucking TARDIS door, motherfuckers.
Oh fuck yeah! I don't know if I've seen that one. Maybe I just haven't paid attention.
Oh, it's usually not on camera. We've gotten him to show it, I think, once.
And
We were having basically a Doctor Who fan off thing, and he fucking won. I was very
His
upset. We're
webcam-
showing off all of our little like Doctor Who paraphernalia kind of stuff, and he's just like, "Look," and we're like, "You fuck, you win."
What's a Doctor Who?
Okay, kicking
What's
you
a
out of the
Doctor Who?
room.
Okay, yeah.
Shut the fuck up, Max.
I'm the Tom Baker fan. I don't know why. That's my Doctor Who. Probably because that's the one I was exposed to. Like whenever I was home sick from school, it's the first thing that came on, and I was just like, "This is so cool. I wish I had some LSD." Just like
This is kind of things. I mean, you look at the classic Who, and it was cheesy as hell. And then you look at the more modern stuff, and you know sometimes they try to do somewhat more serious themes, but a lot of times there's a lot of cheese in there. And I used to get in these huge fights with Lenator over whether Doctor Who was supposed to be somewhat cheesy or not. And I'm like, dude, no, it fucking is. And you'd be like, no, they're trying to be serious. I'm like, no, they're fucking not. Not
Well, like,
sometimes, but rarely.
like K9, that just like Ting dog that was just, it was basically an RC car with a dog on top of it, and then the what are they, exterminate, what are those called again?
Dalek.
Daleks. Yeah, they were just basically giant like vending machines with arms just driving around.
The greatest, the most powerful, most dangerous foe in the universe defeated by stairs.
I will.
Well,
So
I
I'm not
mean, in the current series, they can kind of float and hover and all this shit. But in the original, I mean, that's how you got away from the Daleks, is you went up a flight of fucking stairs. Quite seriously.
Kind of like Ed 209 in RoboCop, just like.
So I'm not much of a Whovian, but out of all the Doctors I've seen, I do like the 10th Doctor. The one played by Christopher Eccleston.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I actually thought he had an action hero-y quality to him, which I know.
But
Which I
yeah,
kinda liked.
the cheese factor is very much an intentional thing, and Lenator never seemed to get it. And he'd be like, "Oh, it's a shit show." I'm like, "No, you just don't fucking get it." But in his case, he's somebody that didn't freaking understand Firefly.
Oh,
I just dug Tom Baker's scarf and just the frizzy, the semi-fro he had rolling.
Oh yeah, what was it, 40-something feet? It's insanely long anyway around it. one of the most useful props ever. But yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Max, do you have an avatar where it looks like you're on a microphone? Or
Yes.
It looked like Freddie Mercury or something. I don't know yet.
Oh yeah.
Once upon a
Speaking
time.
speaking of which, though, anybody looking forward to or not looking forward to the Queen movie coming out with Rami
even
Malek? Yeah,
Oh, they're gonna fuck it up. I just know it.
Yeah,
What's the
well,
point?
yeah, I know. There's mixed stuff on it because somebody said that what Borat was supposed to be. Sacha Baron Cohen was originally slated to play Freddie Mercury.
The Queen's one of those weird things.
Yeah.
Because the people that really grew up with it, the following is almost, I almost want to call it cult-like or quasi-religious in nature. In that when Pepsi decided to take Bohemian Rhapsody to make a commercial, everyone that I know at least thought it was sacrilege.
Well, and they didn't really become really known about among like the newer generation until they were popularized by Wayne's World. You know, almost in a way. So, well, and We Will Rock You, you know, at hockey
You
games
can't
and
fucking
stuff.
escape that shit. Most people don't realize that that's part of a longer song.
Yeah. But like he was a great great vocalist, great performer, and everything. And to do a show, on him, it's just or a movie on him. I don't know. But if you see the trailer, Rami Malek actually has a prosthetic set of teeth and cheekbones that are set to just because. Well, if you ever look at Freddie Mercury, the guy is kind of got some choppers, going.
Oh yeah.
So, but
part of a success.
But Rami Malek, I don't think is English. I think he was born in New York. I don't know, but I only bring that up because Sacha Baron Cohen is. So, but he doesn't. I don't know. He doesn't. I don't see him as a Freddie Mercury. I don't really see anybody as a Freddie Mercury.
No, I don't. It's hard to see Freddie Mercury as Freddie Mercury for that matter, quite frankly.
But the trailer sounds so cool. It looks really cool because they do like a mix of all the hits. They kind of make a super mix. Like they have Queen Killer in there. We Will Rock You. I don't know. You just have to watch it. It's so.
Do they have the Kurgan theme though?
Yeah. Oh, I don't think so.
I can't even remember the name of the damn thing. It's a Touch of Magic or something like that.
See, now I have to celebrate.
But yeah, they did the original Highlander. They did the theme for the Kurgan.
Oh yeah. Well, they did Flash Gordon.
Oh, that is actually my favorite Queen soundtrack album.
The Flash Gordon one. Flash.
And then that's it.
The universe? Yeah. Oh god, not only the old movie that they did of that, but there was actually a TV serial that they did that goes back ages and ages back to black and white, and oh my god, it was so bad. And it's so beyond everyone's time. I just dated myself, didn't I? Shit. Oops.
I actually met Sam Jones, and I couldn't help myself. I said, "Thank you for saving every one of us." He laughed. He thought it was funny, but I just had to. I was like, "He's gonna hate me, but I have to. I don't care."
One of those things he would have gotten before.
Yeah.
Probably not. Actually, it's a unique enough way to frame it that it was probably a new way to approach it, and yeah.
Well, it was because of the Queen song. He's like, "He saved every one of us." I was just like, "Thank you for saving every one of us."
Just to show off a
Oh,
little.
there you go. Yeah.
Oh, sick.
But if you go with a slightly more obscure approach, it tends to be appreciated a little bit more, I've found.
There is.
Why are you listening to the devil's music, Epi?
There's actually, I think Timothy Dalton is in that movie. There's a handful of decent stars. Oh, Max von Sydow is Ming, I think, in that one.
Instead of the answer to why do you listen to the devil's music is because the Christian music sucks.
Not really. I actually really enjoy Gregorian chanting.
Oh,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
that's its own style.
Oh, okay, let
But I think
me
we're
reframe
talking
this
about
to
when Christians
Christian.
try to do other styles.
Let me reframe that to Christian pop music. Or
Yeah, that
Christian
much I
metal, or
agree.
just about any other fucking kind of Christian. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, there's a Gregorian chant album. I think it came out in the early mid '90s where they did "It
Enigma.
Smells Like Teen." Yeah, and they did "Smells Like Teen Spirit." It smells like Teen Spirit and several other songs. In Gregorian
Actually, the
chant.
one
It
about
was
the Marquis de Sade was one I liked the best. I'm not kidding. It was called Sod. It's what it was Sod Damois Keska Shisha or something. It was basically give me what I'm looking for. But yeah, it's it was a neat song. It's actually had a good sound to it.
If you want to see an abstract, well, it's a film about the Marquis de Sade. Quills with Joaquin Phoenix, Kate Winslet, and Jeffrey Rush.
Oh, good. I thought you were going to talk about a French film about Coco Marquis de Sade, in which it's just basically this character walking around having conversations with his penis.
No. It's Jeffrey Rush plays Marquis de Sade, and he's locked up in a convent asylum, and the chambermaid, played by Kate Winslet, basically gives him gossip to write about. And it gets so crazy that they confiscate all his pens and paper and everything.
What was the name of this?
The movie is called Quills, Quills, and it came out, I think, late 90s, early aughts. And
2000.
It's a pretty good movie. It's really good.
And it really has less to do with the actual life of the Marquis de Sade.
It's not historically accurate by any means, but it's...
We don't have the torture dungeons or anything in it. Aww.
No. But it's pretty cool.
I mean, if I'm going to watch a movie with Marquis de Sade in it,
I better have sex dungeons.
Fuck yeah.
There is a little torture in it. They do take out his tongue, I think, at certain parts. Oh, spoiler alert, sorry.
Well, yeah, but that's not
You ruined it.
That's not the pornish little torture dungeon thing that was allegedly going on there.
Oh, Pew wants... Oh, okay, I see. Hide your children, hide your kids, hide your wives.
And hide your husband because they're raping everybody out here.
Everybody up in here.
Yeah.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb.
You know that guy, like, took his meme fame and basically tried to, weaponize it for Jesus?
Yeah, I remember that. He said he's no longer homosexual. I don't know. I can't remember.
He got into some like church group that fucked him up a little bit.
He was on Tosh.0 though, I think.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Web redemption, I think it was.
I don't know. I mean, I get that they've decided that gay conversion therapy is abusive and all these other things, but any kind of thing that's supposed to encourage somebody not to be gay that starts off with them sitting on another man's lap, I think it's kind of disturbing. And so
you beat a pillow.
Effective.
You beat a pillow and say, "Mom, why did you do this to me?" Or "Dad," depending on.
It's just fucked up shit, man, psychologically and otherwise. But yeah, I was trying to make a bad joke there. I guess it fell flat.
Well, you were talking about something that I think actually happened for a while. I mean,
yeah. Is a thing.
Mike's the only one who's not indicated since I've been here that he's tired, so that's probably why I missed it.
I am, but I'm not admitting it. Sorry, no, I just.
Yeah.
Shit, that reminds me, I'm supposed to be reopening an app. Damn it! Close out of this shit.
Yeah, I just
running for hours and not doing its job. Let me reopen that. Ugh.
But it is getting kind of late, so I probably will head out here in a second.
I'm gonna head out fairly soon too. I had to, take some Benadryl because it sucks being mildly allergic to dogs and then having to have one in my room. My doggo just had surgery today, so she's holed up in here. Yeah, she's doing fine. She's on cloud 9 right now.
Is she wearing the cone of shame though?
She's wearing the inflatable,
Oh yeah, I've seen those. I used to have one for one of the pups.
Yeah, she's pretty comfy with these.
We actually ended up giving that one away to somebody else when their dog had surgery, so yeah, we don't have it anymore. But yeah, I'm familiar with the non-cone version, the more donut type.
Yeah, that's what she's got, and it's functioning as a nice little pillow for her right now, actually.
Yeah, as opposed to those cones that just look fucking cruel.
Oh, speaking of dogs with head surgery, I had a friend. I'm trying to stay off Facebook as much as possible because it's just depressing. But a friend posted that picture of the dog with the ham, slice of ham on its head, and I don't know if you've heard about. Yeah, and actually got so many people to share it that it's just like, please donate to this. This is like 8 years old. It's like the dog has a piece of ham on its head. The dog's face is fine. don't give this guy any money. I mean, you guys don't have to. There was a picture, it was a meme that went around. It says, please donate. Yeah. This dog went into a burning house to save its family, yet it strategically only was burnt in this ham slice shaped portion of its head. So, yeah.
That's not the worst of the recurrent bullshit. There's one that I just find morally repugnant. I mean, that's one thing, the ham on the dog's head thing. But there was a kid that was born without a brain, one of those cases, and the mother kept making all these claims that the daughter was just fine, even though she was literally born without the part of the brain that allows for consciousness. And they've kept this kid alive in a hospital for, I think it's going on like 18 years now. And they're constantly going around on Facebook trying to raise funds for the child's like college fund and all this other shit.
Oh my God! They just
like they specifically cite a college fund.
They just don't.
One of the things, yeah. It's to pay for continued medical expenses, and they're hoping eventually she'll be able to go to college or some shit. I mean, the bullshit that goes around with it just keeps changing. But these people are keeping this poor now woman alive on fucking life support when there's literally no brain function. It's atrocious.
And there never has been.
Yeah.
At that point, you're just growing human flesh. You're not growing. There's not a person there.
Yeah, you're growing human flesh and trying to cash in on it because they're constantly trying to get money out of it. It's just deplorable. Absolutely fucking deplorable. It disgusts me. Absolutely. Yet at the same point, this case is held up. I've heard Christians cite this bullshit, claiming that it's possible for a person to be completely alive and just fine without a brain.
Yeah, but what does completely alive mean?
Oh, no, they put makeup on her and all this other stuff, and they try to, like, pose her in the bed to make it look like, it's bad.
At that point, you're playing with, you're morbidly playing around with a
body. At that point, I would argue that's borderline, like, corpse manipulation. I mean.
Pretty much, yeah, but it's fucking bad. I saw this going around on Facebook again recently, and this is something that's promoted by Mind Body Duelists, claiming that you don't need a brain. It's like, oh yeah, you do.
Well, and the point to be made about, I mean, I don't want to get into a euthanasia argument this late at night, but no, like the point about certain aspects of that is it's like we're keeping them alive, and it's like, no, you're preventing them from dying.
Yeah. And
dying is a natural process of death, and there are cases where
natural process of life, technically.
Well, right, yeah, and you need to, there are points where it's like we need to keep them alive so we can fix them so they can live again. Well, if they're not fixable, it gets to a point where it's just like you're preventing the natural process of death. I mean, there was a South Park episode where Kenny was dead and they chose to bring him back to life, but they needed him in heaven to fight off.
Yeah.
You remember? So that was an illustration of that.
They're actually, it reminds me of what my vet told me when it was about time for me to put down my old dog. He was about 13 at the time. His vision was pretty much gone. He had a bad case of hip dysplasia. He had a lot of problems going on. He was going blind, and he was just slowly going senile, to the point that you'd say his name and he wouldn't even respond anymore. But at the same point, you take him to a new place and he starts just reacting because it's someplace new and he didn't understand where he was or any of these other stuff. He was basically gone for all intents and purposes. But when I talked to the vet and I'm like, how do you know when it's time to put the dog down? He's like, oh, you'll know. Well, when I finally brought him up there, he let me in on what he was really saying, which is the point at which it's time to put the dog down is when you finally accepted that it's time to put the dog down. And he told me that he's seen plenty of people that will hold on to the point that it gets absolutely brutal and just terrible for the actual animal because they refuse to let go. And that's kind of what this reminds you of. It's just like it's been time to let go for years at this point. And it strikes me that they're just cashing in on it.
I hope that's not what it is, but...
just to throw something in there, at least on the perspective of Catholic teaching regarding this. So while it would be a sin to kill this person directly, like plunge a knife through them or give them drugs or that cause them to die, there's actually nothing in Catholic teaching that prevents, for example, letting the person die, like just unhooking them when they're brain dead, when they're not going to live, giving them something to kill off the pain, and then
When
just
somebody's
letting them
brain
go.
dead, can you really say that they're alive in any way, though?
Yeah, I have serious issue even calling that a person, honestly.
Oh, so let's parse out a couple of things. One, they're alive in the biological sense of the term. So even plants are technically alive, and they have no brain function whatsoever.
I said in any meaningful sense, right? I did say that.
I'm not sure what you mean by meaningful. Oh, well, that's a bit ambiguous. But just putting that to the side, and to get to the other point, could you ask it again, Pew?
I think not
right,
being
you have
capable.
trouble calling. Right,
I think not being capable of quality. Sorry, I don't think not being capable of any qualia would be alive in any meaningful sense. How's that for you?
Okay, sure, we can go with that. Although, to be fair, there are times when I'm asleep and passed out where I'm incapable of actually comprehending qualia. But
you'll eventually wake up.
Yeah, and you're capable. You're just not awake. I mean, completely incapable. You know, literally not having a mind. That's a different thing.
I mean, yeah. To be fair, though, that's circumstantial. Yeah, to be fair, though, that's circumstantial.
And that's what I'm talking about, dude.
Well, that's what I mean. In this circumstance, he's not going to wake up.
No, what I mean is if tomorrow some genius cracked a way of helping this poor girl be alive, then yeah, she would technically be capable.
If they found a way to install a brain in her head, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, that was never there. Well, that wouldn't be her at that point. That would be some other brain that would be put in her body.
Look, I think we're getting bogged down in the... I just don't want to get bogged down in this tangential metaphysical question, but the point I'm saying is this person, or the point I'm getting across is this this human being, while it would be wrong to kill it or them, while it would be wrong to kill them, it would not be wrong to allow them to die, given the circumstance. That's all I was
This lump of
getting
meat with no neural function, so even if you were to postulate some kind of soul, it's clearly not having a connection to the body. So
I mean,
if you were to postulate that there's some kind of soul attached to this thing, it would be essentially imprisoned in it. So the more moral thing to do, even theologically, would be to let the body die to free the soul. Wouldn't it?
Sure. Yeah. That's
that
what
makes
I'm
sense.
saying. No, that's exactly what I'm saying.
And I think that's important because I think a lot of people argue against that, saying like as long as it's alive until the natural death occurs. Well, it's like, well, we're unnaturally preventing natural death at that point. So I think I see what you mean by let the body die so the soul can escape. So.
Yeah. Speaking of which, it's actually funny that we're on this topic because I caught my dad that he had accidentally signed a DNR for the dog before she went into surgery, and he didn't know that's what he had done. He thought he was signing consent for the opposite thing, and I read it over and I was like, no, fix this shit.
Yeah, I remember.
My wife has had all kinds of conversations about that kind of shit lately.
This is almost not funny, but I remember somebody saying, like, we were at a nursing home and there were the signs next to, the beds or whatever. They said DNR. And I think I remember a person said, gosh, a lot of people here work for the Department of Natural Resources. And I'm like, oh my God.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's awful.
And I was just like, okay, I'll tell you this when we get outside.
Yeah.
It's like somebody going to a cemetery saying, wow, a lot of these people were named Rip.
I have had a lot of conversations, especially over the course of the last few years with my wife, about essentially we'll break it down to being qualia and what is and isn't life for all intents and purposes. Because there's a point at which you know, I have that one proverbial stroke that I'm no longer me. I want her to put me the fuck down. I don't want to basically be trapped in a fucking shell looking at the outside world and unable to interact with it at all. If it ever gets to that point, I expect to die very quietly in my sleep. And I've already told her the means by which to do it.
What's interesting and almost scary about it too is like that could happen to it. Like there was a friend of mine whose best friend, it was the night of their college graduation. On her way home, she was hit by a truck. She's 18 years old. She's not sick. She's perfectly healthy, but now she's in a she's alive. She has some movement, but she has no way of communicating. So it's just like, it's not a case of being in bad health. It's being a case where traumatic injury could even initiate such a situation.
And in my case, I'm worried about, one stroke hitting and taking out all of my motor functions. So I'm just a brain trapped in a shell. And I certainly wouldn't want to carry on like that. That's horrific to just even think about. You just quietly go mad in there without anyone ever knowing it.
Well, what would be really cool, and I'm just saying, if she had to end you, use the samurai sword behind you to do seppuku.
Oh no! What we're actually it's going to be with insulin actually.
Oh, okay. Oh. That was a joke, by the way.
It'll just be basically give me a dose of the wrong insulin. There's one that's the short term and one that's the long term. If you give me the long term dose with a short one, I will fucking die.
Yeah, that reminds me of what is it? $1 Million Baby. I don't know if you've seen that, but he basically she's. Well, spoiler alert if you're not going to watch it, it's a Clint Eastwood film, but Hilary Swank is a boxer and she becomes a quadriplegic. And she basically has no fight, nothing left in her. She was a boxer and everything, and he essentially euthanizes her, the same way. And while he's doing it, he actually, he tells her about her life as a boxer and what her name was Makushla, which is Celtic for my heart. And so anyway, it was really poetic, but the point was, he realized that she, even though was able to communicate with her head, her life essentially was gone. And I'm not comparing this to what you talked about earlier, but the emotional and subtle and almost generous thing to do in that case was to let her go.
Yeah.
Let's see now. Give me 1 second.
That's just a movie, though. But my point, there's always symbol, life imitating art, art imitating life. We always reflect on symbolism. If you've ever watched Boondock Saints, what's the symbology of that? I think you mean symbolism. Symbolism. It's a great movie.
Hey, Halo, how's it going out there? I see a blue halo somewhere. Anyway, once again, we do, of course, have the join link down there if anyone wants to join. We're pretty much slowly winding down here a little bit. I think that most everybody's worn themselves out, and we had pretty gross conversation for a while. Not sure why we still have 14 viewers.
Open tab sleeping viewers.
Well, we have people on the West Coast, Texas. Oh, I'm sorry, Texas.
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ!
I'm on the Gulf Coast. Wrong coast, fucker.
That was a G-Man phone call reference.
Oh, okay.
That's weird.
He called Matt Dillahunty in Texas because he thought Matt Dillahunty was on the West Coast.
No, he thought that Texas was.
Yeah, he thought Texas was on the West Coast. He thought it was. He's like, no, he was 3 hours behind me.
Jesus fucking Christ.
He's just G-Man as a box of rocks. And yes, I'm stipulating that G-Man is interchangeable with the words dumb as.
But I think there's something to be said that it says if somebody that moronic is capable, we made technology so easy that so many moronic people can get on and spread their influence. It's just like, you shouldn't be able to write a line of code before you host a chat session. I don't know. It's like, or be able to spell,
Oh, well, I can do one of those things.
Oh, cool. It was loud enough that Gretchen could hear what I was playing quietly in the background. Cool. Y'all couldn't because y'all are in here.
What were you playing quietly?
Aw, man.
I played a couple seconds of the Dead Parrot sketch.
Ceased to be.
Unfortunately, I found one that was fairly low volume, but yeah.
See, now I'm at a bit of in a conundrum here because Gretchen has asked that I not call her Gretchen and instead by something else, but I don't know if that's just for public or private.
Just call her Gretchen in public. I'm familiar with the other name as well, but I don't use that one. And here's kind of the thing: it's kind of a general decorum thing. I tend to call people by their handle, whether I know their actual name or not.
Yeah,
it's just kind of one of those things.
There's some people who for me it depends on the context. There's a lot that goes into whether I choose to call somebody by their real name if they've shared it with me or not.
Yeah, this is why I really don't like talking to the what's their faces, the pal talkers. They usually refer to me by my first name, which it's not a well-known secret. So I'm not saying they're doxing me because they're not.
Because you're not a dipshit.
Because I'm not a dipshit, yeah. But I will say I'd much prefer that it wouldn't be used.
Right. I mean that's kind of how I feel. Except I think that probably fewer people. I mean I don't give mine out as much, but I mean, what's a first name, right? I mean you're on camera, so that's a little different, but.
Well,
yeah,
actually,
Gary.
the thing that got me is we have this tendency among certain people that they start insisting that you tell them your actual name and this and that, and I'd always say no, and I'd have people, you're dishonest for it. I'm like, no, and I'd have to explain to them that when I first came on here, I dealt with Scientology, so I have to be super careful with my docs in general. To the point that I'm even using a pen name just in case, because I will have to eventually market the book a little bit through my channel. So I have to worry about my actual name getting out there, but that's because of the litigious nature of the cult of Scientology.
Well, see, all this time I was doing that people finder on Shadow Heathen. So I've been you're telling me I've been wasting my time? Jeez, all right.
Well, you will find Timothy Matters, and actually I had one Scientologist that got all the way to Mark Lawrence, and I was very impressed by them. That's not my name, but they got all the way to that one, which still impressed me.
Who's Mark Lawrence?
He sounds like a member of a boy band.
Mark Lawrence is the name associated with the email account that I registered 13 Heathens under.
That's a weak ass.
It's a Hotmail account that I made years and years ago to trap my ex-wife in her efforts to cheat on me.
Wow.
And it existed prior to me going after Scientology, but I still had the account and password, so I used that for 13 Heathens. So even when they managed to get the name associated with the email account, it was still the wrong fucking name. But it had existed for like 4 years prior to them trying to figure out who the fuck I was, so they didn't even question it. And they're like, aha, we figured out who you are. Are you the Christian artist, Mark Lawrence? I'm like, nope. Nice try, though.
That's why my real name is Carlos Spicy Wiener.
Ooh.
That's from Family Guy. He's like,
oh, fan of that.
Come in. And he's like, Carlos Spicy Wiener, come in. Then there's, what was it, Rooster Cogburn from, what was it? They remade it not too long ago.
True Grit.
True Grit, thank you. Gosh, I should be able to remember that.
I'm not sure which one I liked better, the newer one or the older one.
I'm a little torn as well, because I think it might be my part, because I'm partial to Jeff Bridges a bit. But I Big Lebowski.
Yeah. Incidentally, the funny thing is, even if they did figure out what my actual name is, there's at least 3 people with my actual name in my hometown, so that would only get them so far anyway. And at least 2 of them are also in the tech field, so hey, they'd really have a hell of a time of it. But yeah, them getting as close as the Mark Lawrence thing, I'm like, ooh. Of course, the fun part was when I actually called to Flag Base at one point to talk to one of the guys that was one of the Scientology handlers, one of the OT8s. I had a conversation with him, and I called in, and I said 13 Heathens, and they're like, I'm sorry, what did you say your name was? So I changed it because I'm like, okay, they're not going to let me through with my handle. So that was where the whole Thurston Heathens came in. And he's like, oh, so online you're 13 heathens, but your name's Thurston Heathens. That's kind of clever. I'm like, you are so fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's kind of like the people that think my real name's Hugh Renew. On Facebook, like there's several people who have like, oh, I found your real Facebook, dude.
There was somebody, I can't remember who it was, but they have a handle and it's an anagram for Kent Hovind.
Oh no.
And Shannon, I think it was on a Shannon Q video, and she just was like, and she was like so impressed.
Hang on. Pew, Mike, how new are you to the community here in general?
I've been around maybe about a year, but I'm off and on. I'm not too active. I just come in when something sounds
there was a musical video done pertaining to Hovind ages ago called "You're a Fucktard, Aren't You, Kent?" If you haven't seen it, you should look it up.
Yeah, I've heard it. It's excellent.
Oh,
if you haven't heard it, you must. It's a requirement.
Yeah, I've heard it. It's pretty good.
It's amazing. So good.
But it's interesting that you think he is like, I'm not upset at all. That's why I'm making this response video showing me being upset. And you believing in evolution, one day you'll be at the gates. I love science, but let's take a look at these trees here. Let's take a look at these. They have water in them.
Oh god, the water.
Water.
I recently reached out to a couple of the big apologists, asking them if I could potentially have a conversation with them at some point, and of course my channel's not big enough for them to respond because they're kind of assholes that way. But
yeah,
I remember Aaron Ra. I'm sorry. See, I already did it. Aaron Ra was doing a interview with him or talking with him, and he got upset. Aaron Ra got upset with Kent because he could not pronounce his name correctly. And he says, you know what? Eventually I'll just start pronouncing your name correctly. I'll start calling you number 2345687, which is his prison number, I think, or something.
Ooh, yep, that would be it.
I was like, that was pretty good, yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of funny because the two that I reached out to was Comfort, because I'd love to have fun with Comfort at some point. And Hovind, because I'd like to have a conversation with Hovind that would probably last about 20 minutes.
I actually think Ray Comfort is not as bright as neither, like Ken Ham and Kent Hovind. I think actually is just crazy, and as nonsensical they are, I think they have more brain cells than Ray Comfort. I think Ray Comfort is the least intelligent among all of them.
No, I literally just want Comfort to come in and ask his questions. I literally just want him to come in here and give me his usual sinner question. Well, that would make you a thief. That would make you a liar. That would make you, etc. Because there are certain questions that he's never had answered a certain way. I don't want to see what his reactions are.
Oh, they're all trap-formed questions. Like.
Of course they are, but.
Oh no, but he's like, well, I assume you haven't killed anyone. No, I'm responsible for somebody's death. Go ahead, ask that one. Just to get the reactions.
And of course he goes to Venice Beach because, only the best people to interview are
oh yeah, just oh my fucking god.
But also it's like, well, I'm obviously a murderer because I write science fiction and I kill off my characters on a regular basis.
That'll piss people off.
I play GTA 5. It's like
well, that too. Yeah, I mean, it's the twisting of these things. Well, have you ever told a lie? Ooh, I wish I had.
Well, the best answer to that is no, and he'll be like, "You've never told a lie."
No, actually, have you ever told a lie? In my case, I wish I had, because that's where the responsible for somebody's death comes into play. Yeah. Back during my first psychiatric hospitalization, this girl said, "Well, there's no way anyone could kill themselves in here," and I said, "Sure, they could." Well, bullshit. How would you do it? And I fucking told her the truth, and I wish I'd lied. If I'd lied, she'd still be alive.
Well, and one argument I have, he says, have you ever told a lie? If the answer is yes, he immediately said, well, that makes you a liar, does it? It's like, no, I'm a postman or something like that. It's just like, that just simply means I have lied. I am not an occupational liar. It's like
an occupation, yeah.
I'm not a pro, I'm just an amateur.
I mean, I know what he's trying to say, but by
filthy casual.
Yeah, it's like, by definition, I am not a liar. I have lied.
What does that make you? A good salesman.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like Well,
So
real quick,
I-
let me
I-
just say this.
All right.
But it gets to a point where it's just like, how many good things do you have to do to be a good person versus how many bad things do you have to do to be a bad person? That's kind of where
I just think it'd be fun to sit there and have him go through his little battery of questions and give him an unexpected answer to see how he'd respond, and then afterwards ask him important questions like, "What's your favorite color?"
Yeah,
That's great.
Do you prefer coffee or tea?
And then you say green tea with a
What's
splash
your
of
favorite
lemon.
kind of tea, if you'd like tea?
I like
You
Mr.
gotta start
T.
with the tea.
Ask him questions that require him to be an actual human being to answer, basically.
I love doing that with Ronnie. That's actually amazingly fun. Is to try to get him to be human. Like, and when he is, it's actually like, oh, okay, so tamales. That's neat.
But I mean,
I
these are
think it's
people
just-
that are just so incredibly robotic. Hovind, on the other hand, I want to talk to him about Flat Earth.
Ooh, that would be good.
What?
Now, the reason why I want to talk to him about Flat Earth is he's had a lot of Flat Earthers that are basically Christians that believe the Earth is flat, that he's been sitting there having to school and give them a hard time about just how literally they're taking things. And the Flat Earth interpretation, how he's calling it unbiblical, while they're calling it biblical. And he basically called this a atheist conspiracy to make Christians look stupid. And I'd like to talk to him about that claim.
Oh, that's all on you guys.
Because we've been going after this, dude. We've been trying to stop this shit. Christianity's been getting in the way.
You know, actually, are you familiar with Frank Turek?
Mildly.
Actually, he made a post about. You guys are familiar with Romans chapter 13, right?
13.
Oh, yeah,
not under that name.
No, Jeff
remember.
Sessions brought it up the other day.
Jeff Sessions brought it up, along with a few others, about how, oh, well, it says you have to respect the government, and you shouldn't rebel. The government has the right to bear the sword, and this is why we can levy taxes. And Jeff Sessions said this is also why you ought to respect the rules of the American government.
Oh, yeah, the part that was put in there to keep all the Christians from being killed by the Romans. Got it. That
Got
one,
it.
right?
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually respond. So Turek's article actually said, well, apparently, if we had to go with the hyper wooden literal understanding, then we couldn't have the American Revolution. But because the American founding fathers were all great Christians, they of course knew the importance of this and weren't quick to rebel. I actually asked him, okay, but one of the complaints was they had taxation without representation. The verse itself doesn't say the government has the right to taxes on the proviso or on the provision that there is representation. It just says government has the right to tax. So it doesn't sound like the American Revolution was justified. How do you answer that? Still waiting for a
hush.
response.
Anyway, I'm going to address a couple comments made in the chat briefly. Actually, I go with the Ruth thing. It comes with being raised Catholic. Sorry, Gretchen. That, and I actually screwed up and said Ruth in that video, so I'm stuck with it now. It was
Yeah,
Esther, not
I'll-
Ruth. That's where that came in, because I'm like, okay, I got this from Ruth. Why'd I just say, yeah, okay. It's from Esther, though, and I screwed that up and left it in there and just corrected Fundy in post. I thought it was more fun that way. But yeah, it was because you were the one that actually referenced those verses, is why I ended up screwing up and saying Ruth.
But anyway, I'm gonna head out, guys. Good talking to you.
Take care.
See ya.
Have a good evening.
Incidentally, Gretchen, we will be going off air in a few minutes. Feel free to join. The link's down there.
Yeah, I'd love to say hi.
Yeah, get your little funky butt in here. It's been a while.
By the way, sorry if I referenced the American Revolution a few too many times. It's just fairly interesting.
Yeah, I don't.
Oh, you're just
Literally,
you're
it's
just
old
jealous.
news,
You're
dude.
just jealous of our greatness.
Yeah, chances are I'm not going to convince a lot of people on this one, but I like taking the controversial opinion. Also, I want to be able to say...
Well, with Trump as president right now, I think there's plenty of us that are seeing fault with our current system.
Go British, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, and in any case, I actually wanted to bring something else up. One other reason why I've started supporting having like a traditional monarchy is so I could actually say to guys like G-Man and Veckel, I'm far more invested in having a Christian nation than you are. All you guys want is prayer in school. What do I want? I want a full-on Catholic monarchy. So,
I was actually gonna bring up the Catholic monarch thing, and I'm sure that's a can of worms that it would take a while for you to unpack. But when I first heard.
To be fair, I'm also good with an Anglican monarch. So I'd be cool if America wanted to go back and have a governor general instead of a president and have Queen Elizabeth ruling over it. But I doubt that's going to happen. So I'm good with an Anglican monarch.
And I doubt that that's going to happen, and I somehow doubt that you're serious.
I'm going to throw him out of the room. I'm getting bored with this real quick.
I want to work. Look, I'm going to work within the system that I have, but long-term goals, even if it takes like 5 generations, yeah, I want to see this happen.
Jesus, five generations from Republic to Catholic monarchy. Let's do this.
Let's do this shit.
I mean, you're not all about them 5-year plans, but 5 generations may just be the ticket.
If I have enough kids, it's possible.
You and Jim.
Bitch, I need to start. I have fallen back.
Well, that should be the contest. Fuck this. You know, me and Prudent facing off on Tinder. Me and Epi facing off on Tinder.
85 out still. Holy crap.
Here's the thing. You actually have to. Here's the thing. You have the home field advantage where you could have sex with many girls and have many kids with them. Whereas I actually have to find one and have a lot of kids with her.
Oh.
So,
fuck, I guess that does present a problem for you, huh?
Yeah, I'm at a disadvantage here. Yeah.
This sucks.
Although I could think of a lot of good things, I think I could think of a lot of better ways to reform the democratic system that exists currently. I'm really fond of this one new innovation called quadratic voting, or quadratic democracy.
Okay, hang on. Let me highlight that part of the screen, because if I'm going to kick you because I'm tired of this conversation, I'm going to have to make sure that I show it on camera to be honest about it.
Oh, okay. Quadratic voting. I'm actually going to look that up.
So, just to sum it up, it works like this. You pay for your vote. So the first vote is $1. The second vote is $2. The third vote is $9. And the fourth vote, and so on and so forth. What essentially happens is the more invested you are in a political cause, the more money you put down for a vote in one particular direction or not.
So the person that gets wind is based on who has the most money. Yeah, fuck that.
Yeah.
No, actually, here's the thing, though.
Yeah, I'm not listening. Anyway, for those that tuned in, y'all have a great night.
You could have let me snipe him. He would have been my first sniping. Aw.
You can't. This is a corporate hangout. You can't snipe from this.
Oh,
there's
I
no
forgot
external
you're good at
chat.
things. Oh, that's
no
fair.
external. There's no way to do that. Once again, Gretchen, you're welcome to join. I'm going to be going off in just a moment here, so if you want to chill and talk offline for a few minutes, you can. But I am taking this offline. Just as a footnote to folks, I did that just for the fun of it, because, yeah, I'm not getting another argument with Epi, not this hour of night. My brain function, I've been going long enough. Part of the result of the stroke damage is what's referred to as a reduction in attention. And what they mean by attention is your ability to basically follow a conversation for a prolonged period of time. And I've been past that for a little bit of a while. So I'm well overdue for actually taking this offline, because I'm just going la 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 at this point. One thing I do plan on doing is I'm probably going to be doing some hangouts while I'm working on the book, because I really need to get my ass to work on book 3. So we're going to be working on that. I'm also going to try to remember to add the link to the fundraiser for Jade's funeral fund. I'm going to try to remember to add that, but if I don't, you can also look it up online. Apparently, if you Google it, it comes up fairly readily. And my Google foo and whatnot's been compromised, we'll just say. I've been having all kinds of problems since this most recent stroke, and yeah, I'm working on overcoming it, and part of me basically working on the writing in live hangouts is one way I'm going to do that, because I need to basically reforge the connections between the verbal and nonverbal portions of my brain so I can get back to work. That can, get my ability to do some multitasking and this kind of stuff going again. So they're going to kind of be writing process hangouts, I guess, more than anything else. I expect them to be kind of dull, and I don't expect many people to be watching them, but it's more for my sake than for the sake of the viewers. And on that note, this not technically being a Insomnia Shuffle, but might as well have been, I'm taking it offline, and y'all have yourselves a great night.
And you can go fuck yourselves.